so excited to be here today. My name is Sakashi Chris, and welcome to Mindforked on this lovely Sunday. Coming to you live from Southeast Oklahoma. And I'm so excited to be here. First of all, Dave Hurley, thank you for that intro music. I love the Hurleys. And also, let me just show you guys real quick. I do have some new background from Hellfire Studios. Hi, Hellfire. Love you, buddy. My chat fam's in the house, and I'm so excited to see everybody. Let me go say hi to a couple of people real quick because I don't want to leave my special guest waiting. So I'm just beyond to even have him here. So Poner, hi Poner, my lovely hectic stargazer Cindy, my friend. Lord Rebel Jack is in the house. Sister, alien girl, Rock Esty. Oh my God, Janae Angel, because she is an angel, like literally. She's literally an angel, and I'm just looking. Hi to Longgrass, and again, Hellfire Studios. Thank you so much for that that thumbnail. I love it as a background. So, without further ado, so you guys, first of all, if you guys have any questions during the show, please put it in all caps because we'll be having Q&A, you know, and I'm going to try to insert as many questions as I can across, but I'm probably going to have Q&A at the end. We'll see how Steve's doing. And, but I'm going to try to catch as many. If I don't see you guys on chat, don't take it personally because I am super ADD and it takes all my focus to focus on this special guest because we're going to get into so much stuff and it's going to be a really good time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. First of all, I have a special message for the chat because I love my chatters, and I got Helen is here, and Oliviero from Oliviero's coming to us from Italy. Thank you for being here, Oliviero. So here's my little special message to my chat fam today. Take a look.
If I'm gonna do this, I'll need my news team at my side. News team, assemble! You stay classy, San Diego.
So that is my special message to my chatters, which means that, hey, you guys, let's be cool. We're going to have a great day. There's some crazy stuff and some really tragic things going on right now. And, but we're going to make it through this. We're going to have a really good conversation. And, you know, some of it might be a little bit difficult, you know, because things are sad, but we are going to continue. So I got Cosmic Neighbors in the house. Hi, Ron. How you doing? And lovely Helen. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce this man. So when you talk activism, a lot of people say they're activists. And we might be in our own ways and different causes. But when you really talk like true activism, it's like commitment, passion, action, consistency, and just plain caring. You know, I think this man, Steve, has got to be on top of the list. You know, a lot of people flip-flop on stuff, and Steve's like really consistent across the years. He's been doing this since 1996. I can't wait to get into stuff with him. So without further ado, I have a little quirky intro, which, you know, sorry for being, you know, Mindforked, but this is Mindforked, so we still got to keep it because that's the only one I got. So here we go. I'm going to introduce the man himself. Hold on, please. And I'm so glad everybody's here today. This is going to be so fun. Hold. Here we go. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry that's a little cray-cray, but you're probably like, I'm regretting all my life's choices.
That was pretty cool. Did you do all the graphics on that?
Yeah, I do. I got skills.
I know. No. Everybody's got skill. I'm a little behind the curve there, but I continue to marvel at how the entire country is turning into Steven Spielberg, right? And it's
I
almost
know,
nothing you
right?
can't do. And that was cute. I love it. Some of those particular slots were particularly nice. Send copies. Anyway,
Oh,
thank you.
totally.
Appreciate
I'm
it.
going to send you copies of everything that I showed today, so don't worry. And for those of us who don't know, Steve and I have been talking IT all week. I feel like, we're bonding over the whole tech. I've been checking out his website. So we're going to be looking at some of that information here today. So, Steve, so how are you? First of all, how are we doing today? And be honest, just throw it all out
How
there.
am I doing today?
How are you doing today?
I'm above ground. I'm in Southern California. The weather's good. I'm going to be heading back to DC pretty soon. So if I even complain a little bit, somebody come and slap me across the face a couple of times. I'm fine. Not everybody is, but I'm okay.
Yes, we were talking behind backstage on everything that's going on in the world, and this is a very tragic day, and is a somber occasion. So, hi, Paranormal Pixie Laura. She always goes to. I've seen her pop up in all the shows that you're on too. She's a big fan of yours. So you have a lot of people here that are dying to hear your perspectives. I have people in my channel that are kind of coming from, most of the people in the chat right now know who you are. But, if you want to have a little bit, look back at,
Sure.
those moments that led you to where we are here today, that'd be great. And I can't wait to hear it. So,
very short. I made a decision to get involved in this in '96. Actually, it was late '95. Midlife crisis. What are you gonna? You weren't happy with the first half of your life. What are you gonna do with the second half? Right? They come in many forms. Mine was not too painful. I wasn't married or anything, and I didn't have to leave the family behind and drive away in a red convertible. But I had always been an activist at heart. I'd also been a stand-up comedian at heart, but I didn't know that. If I had known that when I was 30 and was out here in Southern California, I might have gone up to LA and give it a run, but I didn't know it. This turned up much later, but I've put it to good use. I was an activist, but I had not really been an activist. I dabbled. You march here, you march there, you show moral support to what's going on. No, I decided I'm gonna do this. The issue is going to be the ET issue, but not proving it. It was going to be about getting it confirmed by the government. I knew by then that the ET issue. I knew the ETs were here when I was a teenager. I mean, going back 30 prior years to that, it wasn't hard. All you had to do was read the newspapers and apply common sense. I sort of assumed eventually the government would get around to telling us about that, and then went about my life. By '96, they still hadn't told us. And I started, so should I or shouldn't I? I mean, again, I had very little money. I was doing business consulting badly, and I just had to quit a job where I was making some money, but because the owner essentially went insane. What can you do? So I'm sitting there, what to do? But I had read a number of books on the subject, particularly in the previous 4 or 5 years, and it was getting my attention even more. A couple of classics like Communion, right?
Yes, love Whitley. Love Whitley.
And stuff by Bud Hopkins. But I got my hands on a book called Abduction: Human Encounters with Aliens by John Mack, and this pretty much was the deal maker. Because first of all, it was daring and bold. Secondly, it was by a highly accomplished professional academic, a trained psychiatrist with a Pulitzer Prize, who clearly was now researching contactees at a high level in order to bring it forward at another in a way that's appropriate. Almost no one else was doing it. No one else at his level was doing it at all. And so this, I said, if that is happening, and I also learned that he and Pritchard had held a symposium at MIT, not sponsored by MIT, but they were using the facilities and had brought in researchers and contactees from around the world. This was 92, I think. And I'm going, wait a minute. Whoa, what's going on here? And I said, wow, this is happening. If we can get confirmation of the ET presence, what does it mean? Well, it meant a lot. So I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. Odds were against me, but I'd learned one lesson in life by that time, a few lessons in life by that age, 49, which I wish I had known when I was 20. And that is, you're something, just volunteer. Don't follow a paycheck around, which is what I did. You know, who will give me another paycheck so I can pay the rent, going through the ads in the paper. So I called up and said, can I volunteer? And I somehow convinced them from across the country in San Luis Obispo to let me come and do that. And so I went to Cambridge and volunteered for 4 months in his organization, where he was researching contactees, met many contactees for the first time. I'd never met one prior. And it was there while I was volunteering that I figured out what my place would be. It wasn't going to be a researcher. As I said, I wasn't interested in the research. Research had already proven ET presence many times over. It was a simple conclusion that came to me in my office one day. The problem from the beginning, from the very beginning, from the day they pulled Mac Brazel off the street in Roswell, and they interrogated him for 7 days and said, you really didn't see what you saw, recant everything, we'll give you a brand new truck. From that, this was not a matter of science and proof. It was a political decision. And we were not going to get the truth from the government by proving it 10,000 times. We were going to get it by a political process. And I knew Washington. I'd lived there countless times. I say I'd lived there many times. I knew it well. I had a place to stay. And I said, I'm going to Washington. I'm a registered lobbyist, because no one ever had. This would be the perfect entree. It always helps to be first sometimes, not always.
Yeah.
So I headed down to Washington, arrived on July the 4th, registered within a few weeks with the House and Senate as a lobbyist, started putting that out there, knowing full well the media would show up, namely the Washington Post. They did. They wanted to know why somebody was insane enough to register as a lobbyist on the ET issue and sequestered technologies of ET origin, and gave me a decent interview and took a big photo, which unfortunately is one of the worst photos ever of me, stuck it on the front page of the business section, which is the number 2 most important page in the Washington Post. Of course I have it. Of course it's on my website. And that gave me just enough cred to get going. It led eventually and pretty soon to being able to appear on the Art Bell Show, who had made the decision that while he hated politics, he was maybe willing to go down with exopolitics. So suddenly I had an audience of 8 million, and I started to shape the message that would be the cornerstone of my activism forever. I knew early on that I was going to do this until the day I died, which is the way to go if you can, okay? And a lot of people do it. Dianne Feinstein just did it. She had a calling, she had a mission, and she had a role, and she did it until the day she died. The day she died, she actually cast a vote in the Senate and died later that day. Anyway, so I'm sounding pretty, overwrought. Look, that is how it started. John Mack is a great man.
Yeah, I want to ask you, I want to get into that. Now, we have a little bit of an echo, but I just want to make sure the audio is okay.
Let me drop my mic a tad, dear. No problem.
Okay. Hey, Vinny's here. You just talked to Vinny the other day, and he's here.
I shall drop.
There's Vinny. Vinny. So while you do that, and now I can't hear it, so I think we're okay. I wanted to ask you about Mac because I will tell you what chaps my patootie. This whole situation where one person is speaking in, I hope you can hear me. I think you can hear me.
I can hear you fine.
So yeah, so one particular person. So you got all these people saying one story, and John Mack, his birthday was this week, October 4th. He's not here to defend himself yet because of encounters in that particular individual. They came after it. I'm like, that's just a statistical. It's like, how could that eliminate? And discount all the other stories. I'm in IT. I'm in stats. That would be kind of removed. So knowing him, I wanted you to kind of speak to the character of Mac and just, he's not here to talk. So, I mean, just tell me about anything that your observations of him.
Look, John Mack's record, character, and accomplishments, Pulitzer Prize, and everything else doesn't need my reaffirmation. However, let me speak to this matter, but I'm going to speak to it carefully. It was disappointing to me that a very significant 4-series documentary series, which was I believe, produced by Steven Spielberg, who I have tremendous respect for, and Vice Studios, which has done some good work, included in their episode on the Ruah case this gentleman who claimed it was all made up because I made it up. This was absolute nonsense and was how can I put it, a somewhat thoughtless act because, one, it's false, and two, there's a whole lot of kids that are now in their 40s, 45, and who have paid some price for that case and what happened to them, that did not need to see that, and they will see it. So that's the first thing I want to say. Now, the second thing I want to say is this. In early November, I'm going to announce the launch of a very significant organization. It has been in the works for 3 months. And I don't want to go into too much detail because there's some media that have been promised, some exclusives, and that should be honored. But the fundamental purpose of this organization, which is something that I was thinking along the lines of almost 10 years ago and sort of did a little something in that direction, but it was too soon. And the structure behind it kind of fell apart. But it's now back because I have a partner who really brought the thing up and knew how to make it happen. And that'll be announced soon. But to make this point short, this organization is about creating a networking nexus between anybody in Hollywood that's interested in this issue, which, in case anybody is not aware, is everyone, okay, including every major studio head, the funders, the producers, the directors, the actors, the works, a network nexus between them, the film industry, and everybody on the UAP ET research side, which is the citizens, scientists, activists, journalists, witnesses, right, that have carried the water on this issue for 75 years. While the government said, you have nothing there, there is no there, you're wasting your time, you're wasting our time, you're nuts, you're insane, whatever the hell, and help fuel the ridicule that the general society came to hold for it, the contempt, the defamation, and all of that, to connect that film industry with these people in a very meaningful way, structured, so that they can interact as we move forward with the content that is going to be emerging from this day, from now forward, up until disclosure, which is inevitable, and then in the post-disclosure world where it really matters. This is a big deal. And so the point that I'll close with is this. I think if this organization had been formed 4 or 5 months ago, and this interaction between the people making that series had taken place with the individuals that have researched this field all these years, that gentleman would not have appeared in that show, would not have embarrassed that show, and would not have caused pain for the kids that experienced that event. And that's not the only event that happened. But I respect the fact that everybody is a victim of the truth embargo. I don't care how smart you are and how rich you are and how successful you are. The truth embargo, as I've said many times, makes a fool of all of us, including me, because the government for 76 years has simply said, don't believe your lying eyes. We don't know what you're talking about. We have nothing. And if we did, you didn't have a need to know. That's a ridiculous situation, 75 years on, which, thank goodness, is going to come to an end.
Yeah, I was so disappointed. I was disappointed because it was for the sake of having a counterpoint, and it was such a weak counterpoint, and it dumped all over the stories of all those kids. And I mean, we see this in experiencers. We saw it in Roswell. People changed overnight. These people, and they still, to this day, those Ariel school kids are carrying that trauma. And Mac called it that they were traumatized. They weren't crazy. They wanted them to be put on pills right away. Like, go fix the problem, medicate them, and back then. And he's the one that believed, and he's the one that kind of, carried that torch. And I just wanted you to kind of touch on that, because I feel there's something on Mac, and he
did what he could. He did what he could.
Yeah, he did everything he could.
He tragically died in a car accident in 2005. But let me mention, not every child that experienced that event, or the Westfall event in Australia, and a number of other school landings that have not been covered, which is a non-trivial thing. Not everyone has carried a bunch of trauma through their life. Some of them were fine with it, and they've thrived. So I don't want to give the impression that every single child in these events is traumatized, but many were. And so consequently, this was a forced error on the part of good people. I like Vice. Of course, Spielberg has made enormous contributions and is brilliant, and I look forward to meeting him someday. But that was a mistake. This organization that will launch in early November hopefully will help to minimize those kinds of mistakes, because the people in the film industry have a lot to do. They make films. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly expensive. And so they don't have time to read any of the thousands of books that have been written by the research on this subject, going all the way back to Ruppelt and Keogh in the late 1940s. They don't have time for that. And so they're not experts on this phenomena. The experts are the people that the government and many others have been saying are silly people. Well, that's going to change, and it's changing right now. Now we need to get them together, not for recriminations or for that, but to move forward together in a new world, which is coming. I'm not hearing you, dear.
Mute. I'm on mute because I was waiting and I didn't want to interrupt you. And I'm typing. So anyway, thank you so much for talking about Mac, because that's something I just wanted. It's just been bothering me all week, ever since I saw the show. So I just kind of wanted to get it out. But here, let's see. Where do we want to go from here? So we got two big things. Well, we got many, but we have two main things that we're going to focus on, like Paradigm Research Group and the work you're doing there, and the very important NDAA document. So let's talk about where we want to go next. So you've talked in a lot of different shows about where we are on disclosure, and a lot of things are happening. So let's pivot. Let's go down that route, because I know that there's a lot to cover, unless you wanted to go somewhere else.
Let's use this approach. Let me quickly bring your audience up to speed. I want to go into the NDAA that's pending eventual completion. It has to be reconciled inside, but it's supposed to happen by the end of December, unless the entire Congress retires and goes home to be with their family, and the Capitol becomes an empty building. Whatever, but that's what's going to. Let's start with that. Look, and again, I'm going to try to be brief. The last 7 years marks the end game of the truth embargo. It didn't have to be 7 years. It was, as of 2017, it was 70 years old, which is a long time for a policy like that to be maintained, though it's not a long time for authority to maintain, positions which needs change, particularly, and it's usually positions of high levels of importance and implications. They tend to really cling. In any event, the last 7 years we're in the end of the truth embargo, which starts basically at 1947. But it's taken a little long. And the reason it has is that when the dam started to break in late 2017, subsequent events prevented it from completely collapsing. It just delayed and pushed forward the process. And it's just history. It's just history. History is a huge tide or a river flowing in a one direction, and we just sail it in our little boats. And every once in a while, we want to go somewhere with our boat. We want to do this. We want to do that, and we try to maneuver, but the tide of history continues, and so you have to maneuver within that river. I guess I keep mixing my metaphors here, and so every activist movement has dealt with this. Everyone, particularly the ones that last long. And so as of 17, we're entering an era of political upheaval in the United States, which we knew was not going to be good, but we didn't know how bad it would be. And it proved to be really, really bad. And it continues to this day. So we had that. All right. And then in short order, just 2 years later, as we're sorting out not 2 years later, this is late 17, late 19, the worst communicable disease event in the modern era, in some respects worse to the event of 1917, hits the planet, kills millions of people, and creates enormous economic disruption and adds to the political chaos. All right, that happened. And so we're getting through that. We're making some progress there, though the political chaos continues. And then Russia decides, or at least the leader of Russia decides, let's have one more war before I leave this mortal coil, and go out with a bang, and starts a war which has proven to be perhaps the most risky conflict in terms of potential nuclear weapon involvement that we have ever had. The Cuban Missile Crisis was 13 days. It wasn't a war. The Korean War happened when there weren't that many nukes to begin with. This one is a different matter. It is in some ways more dangerous than the Iraq War. So we've had that, right? And so the effect of all this is to really stretch out what could have taken a couple years. Nevertheless, and this is very important, in spite of all of this chaos, which now includes the worst conflict in Israel and Palestine in 50 years, since the Yom Kippur War. And we have no idea where that's going. And so the tide of history has just added that. Now, we could have gotten disclosure much sooner. We could have avoided a lot of this, but it is what it is. It is a very difficult thing to do. There is resistance, there always has been. And so it's taken time, and now it includes this recent event. But be assured that sometime around 2016-15, the consensus within our own government in all levels, military intelligence, Department of Defense civilian, even members of Congress and staff, had reached a point where enough people knew either directly or simply by applying their own intellect that we are in fact being visited by non-humans.
Mm-hmm.
And two, that the policy of embargoing that from the world, in this case, the United States, but it actually is the entire world, is no longer appropriate and needs to end. That consensus, I think, was reached. Not because they all got together in an auditorium and raised their hand. It's just happening organically throughout the entire US government. And so, not surprisingly, a group decided to make a move, a private move, a risky move, not while working within the government, but after leaving it. So you had 10 individuals, the Magic 10, or the, what do they call it? What do I call them? I call them the Amazing 10, Marvelous 10, whatever, came forward in an organization and lent their gravitas and career and took the risk of coming out and saying, we're going to deal with this. We're bringing this to you, not as government employees, but as citizens. And the moment I saw that, I said, this may be it, but I didn't know for sure. This was mid-October of 2017. We found out very soon, in approximately 2 months exactly. They had individuals within the Magnificent 10, that's what I call them.
The Magnificent 10, okay.
Had delivered extraordinary information and evidence to the New York Times for its review and decide whether to write up serious articles about it. Those articles were published on December 16th and 17th in the print edition, but most importantly, they were published on the internet, right? The web edition of the New York Times, which, as we all know these days, does not include just print. It includes a video. And the video in this case was gun camera footage of unknown, unidentified objects taken from our F-17s, which had never been released ever by any government officially, ever. It was a first. And those videos, because that's the kind of world we live in, would go on to be viewed hundreds of millions of times. And so that confirmed to me where this was going. And so over the intervening years, everything that needs to happen to bring about disclosure has been taking place. Briefings, witnesses coming forward, education of members of Congress, classified reports from the government, and a series of tranches of legislation, unprecedented, right? The creation of formal structures and offices. All of this has been taking place in that interim with the last 3 years, starting in late 2020, 21, 22, 23. These are the 3 intense years when the legislation started landing and being signed by the president. And now we are on the threshold of ending that policy of embargo and getting the confirmation from the US president. We are basically only one series of very significant hearings away. And the basis for those hearings has been established, but and could happen tomorrow, right? Could have happened earlier, but because of the political chaos that I mentioned, continued to simply go on, right? And we're facing, massive confusion in the House, the risk of not funding the government, and on and on and on. And so, no, it didn't happen. But they could happen, except now we have a war in the Middle East. And then, I'll take some questions from you, but the next thing we're going to talk about is really big. And that, of course, is the pending NDAA bill authorizing.
Oh, absolutely. We're going
to for defense.
We're going to dissect the heck out of that.
That's my short answer to that lead.
No. That's totally cool. I'm just, here's my concern. It's like the more, so you got all these events, right? They keep making this postponement of disclosure. Just gonna bump it. But on top of that, you got, in the meantime, you got all these organizations pointing fingers and coming up with nothing to see here, nothing to see here. That's this, that's that, debunking everything under the sun. And the lies don't, I mean, a lot of it just doesn't match. And it feels like lies become luggage, and is the longer, and I think back to 1947, because of what happened then, we keep like dragging that and changing the story when the story is that things really did happen. So I'm concerned that the more these events happen, the more the web becomes so much harder to entangle, and the trust is so broken. So I just, give me hope, Steve. Give me hope.
Let me help.
Yes.
It's not nearly as bad. It's not nearly as bad as you think.
Okay.
It's actually pretty good. But I'm saying that as somebody that's reading almost all of the major press on this issue daily, and also archiving the print media articles on my website, which is at paradigmresearchgroup.org. under resources, print media archive. It's up to 15,000 articles. So I would suggest that if somebody were to go read those 15,000 articles, which is simply mainstream professional press. I'm not talking about somebody's blog or fringe or paranormal stuff. No, I'm talking about professional media. If you would read them, you would realize it's not as bad as you think, particularly in the last 12 months. Which will be the last 12 months, or this year, 2023, you're going to see more articles printed in professional media on this issue than in any previous year ever. I'm already up to around 14 to 1,500. All right. And so because I'm following that, as well as I have connections to people that are involved in the developments in Washington, I have less anxiety. All right. But so that's one point. Second point, if you don't,
I'm just pulling this up on the side so people can
If
see. Here's the paradigm, and the link is on the chat.
Can you actually use a mouse? Can you click on resources? Can you actually do that? Of course.
Hold on. Yeah. Okay. That's what, man. I'm tech, man. Remember, I'm a nerd. Okay, here we go.
But you're tech. All right. Click on resources. Man. Now scroll down to print media archive.
Yes,
down,
one of my faves.
Slide on down. There you go. Pop that. Now scroll down a little bit more. You're going to see a center link right there. Pop that.
That one? Okay. Gotcha. And I love this. Look at this. I started playing with the different years. Look at the range of resources.
It hasn't come up on my set yet, on my screen.
Oh, you don't see it? Okay, hold on. Let me see. I'm going to have to stop it and replay it. Hold on. Okay. Because I'm scrolling down.
Yeah, so it's on your machine, not mine. Who knows why? I mean, it's tech.
Let me share this page. Oh, because it switched to a different page. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah,
so now I'm in the print media archive.
Okay, now just scroll down a little bit. Right there. You can scroll up a little bit. You see those years a little higher.
Oh, right here.
You see that this archive goes back as far as 1947, but the articles prior to 2000 and really get down to like 2007, 8. It's hard to get linked versions of these articles. So these are links to articles. Before that, it's limited. Now, there were thousands of articles written between 47 and 2004-5. But in order for me to archive those, I've got to go to the newspaper offices and go through their microfiche, make a copy, convert that to digital, and put it up. And that's a multi-million-dollar project. However,
I remember microfiche.
Sure. But you can see there, you look at 2023, it's already up to 1,463 articles.
Oh, absolutely. You said a trend. I mean,
so you just scroll down. Just scroll down the page. Just let it scroll for a while. And while you're doing that, I'll talk. And so essentially, when you read what the mainstream press is now doing, what you figure out quite clearly is that virtually the entire professional media in the United States, which includes some of the cable news operations, but the network news is hanging behind, which is they're going to regret, is all over this issue. And the other thing that I can tell you about all these articles is that the stigma on the UFO issue is virtually gone. It is quite simply gone. 1 in 100 of those articles will have some stupid ass remark that shows the ignorance and the not the understanding what's going on, in which you include a skeptical piece. About 1 in 100. It's running 1 to 2% now.
There are some, but yeah.
And the stigma is so gone that something remarkable happened that I've talked about, is that I and many others spent a great deal of effort going all the way back to the early aughts to try to get UFO replaced with UAP. I'd already done some other language work replacing UFO cover-up with truth embargo, right? And coming up with the name for the prize of the activist movement, which is disclosure, capital D, meaning confirmation by the president, not by some lieutenant colonel or a member of the House, but no, it has to come from the president, right? Otherwise, the impact and the effect will be not important. And so UAP was critical, because UFO, as you see happening with respect to ideas and people throughout all of history, had been ridiculed, demeaned, bastardized, and made the center for contempt. And so the moment you utter the word, immediately, you are in that zone. You are in what I call the intellectual ghetto. And so the very just using of the term was like getting a slap in the face, right? Boom, right? Use it, get hit again, meaning you're running into the wind. UAP meant exactly the same thing, but it had no history of this ridicule. And so we knew by changing the term to that, it would be easier for a journalist or a member of Congress or a scientist to actually refer to the issue without having to say the bad term UFO. And it worked. Eventually, it became in use. It was used in the briefings. It was used in the congressional material. The UFO only turns up in all that legislation, I think, in 2 places, and it's all as a kind of what we'll call a historical reference. It's all UAP and eventually unidentified anomalous phenomena. And so we succeeded, and I was pleased about that. But here's what shocked me. About a year and a half, over the last year and a half particularly, UFO came back. UFO came back and was being used at will by anybody. Congress, like Tim Burchett was saying it. Journalists were saying it. It was turning up in articles. Why? Because this thing has moved so far forward. And the consensus amongst not only the citizens, but the institutions and so forth. The last to come on board will be the scientists, and they'll have to answer for that one day, that UFO became okay. And now you can say it without the stigma. I never saw that happening. All right. And so when you read these articles, so people that are not,
and I'm still scrolling, by the way, chat. This is in the last, in 20, the latest, and look at this. Everybody, this is a huge resource. You can especially see somewhere like CNN, a little, every once in a while you see a big name and it's like, this is so interesting. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry. I'm just fascinated by this.
New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Washington Journal, Washington Times, NBC, ABC. Okay. And I'm telling you, 1 in 100 of these articles is saying stupid stuff. Now they may get things wrong. And so the problem is that those that are not able to follow it, let me let this airplane fly by. Those that aren't able to follow this closely are just getting a little info from social media, the odd tweet here, the odd Facebook post there, little something on Reddit and whatever. And everybody has an opinion. Everybody has their view of what's going on. And so there's plenty of things that are negative, that are incorrect or are misinterpreted, that kind of keeps the frustration alive, keeps the concern alive. What I want to tell you today is I appreciate everybody posts. I want people following this. I want people putting their 2 cents out there. I want them paying attention. It's okay. All right. But that is the populist engagement. At the what I would call the professional engagement or the activist engagement, we are winning. We almost can't lose now. I mean, it's checkmate in X number of moves. It's just a matter of getting those moves done. And I suggest people prepare for disclosure. So that's the one thing I was saying. And now let's talk. So all these things are adding up to we're gonna finally get it, barring a nuclear war. Now, when nuclear war happens, everything I said, just throw aside. Just forget about it.
At that point, we're all screwed. That's not clear, but yeah, at that point, all bets are off.
I'll be catching the next flight to the southern hemisphere. Others will be climbing into their bunkers, whatever the hell. But forget it, just enjoy your last month on the planet.
Yeah. We'll all get the answers then.
Okay, so here is what your listeners and viewers need to get now.
Listen, chatters.
One of the most important bills ever passed by the United States Congress is going to get signed later this year. It is huge. And it's not huge because of all the standard stuff in the NDA bill for 2024 about funding the Pentagon and the military services and the intelligence and the programs and the foreign program, all that kind of stuff, which is always there. And it's going to come up to $1 trillion, right? And actually there's more than that because there's a lot of money that, just doesn't quite turn up in the bill. Okay. It's going to come up to $1 trillion plus, including funding for the new nuclear submarine program, which is going to come in at $112 billion, 9 new nuclear missile subs. I believe they could be nuclear attack subs, but I think they're nuclear missiles. Whole new line, whatever. It's okay. It includes the 4th tranche of language regarding the UAP and disclosure issue. Now, there are several things about this which are important right off the bat. Okay. First, and I won't go into this at length, but this whole 7-year process that I referred to that starts in October or really December of 2017 has stretched out a little too long for various reasons that I've mentioned. And then when you have something like this happening at this level, the longer it takes for you to get it resolved, the more likely something is going to happen, right? Not simply the tide of history, a war here, a war there, but something with respect to the issue is just going to turn up and you're going to have to deal with it. And so whatever your process is, however well scripted it is, and it's not strictly scripted, but there is a kind of understanding amongst multiple entities of how to go forward, even if they're not meeting regularly to rehearse. Something is going to happen that's not on the script. And that happened big time. June the 5th, early morning. It was the last day of the Contact in the Desert Conference in Indian Wells. I think it's the 8th Contact in the Desert Conference under new ownership. And they have brought it back from the pandemic that really hurt it badly. This was a huge conference. People in the previous location up near Palm Springs, 3,000 people were showing up in campers with 110-degree heat. That's how serious they were about this issue. And then it was getting 3,000 people at the Indian Wells or in the resorts there in Indian Wells. Now it's at the Indian Wells Renaissance. We had 1,200 people in a major conference, and it was exciting. Next year, June at the Indian Wells, we expect 3,000 people there. I will be speaking. I will have a panel.
I'm totally going, by the way. We already talked about it. Me and my husband are going.
And let me tell you, folks, look, I'm not a sales guy. I'm just trying to be helpful here. If you intend to go to that conference in Indian Wells, it's the Contact in the Desert, you must book your hotel now. And
That's crazy, but true.
Book your room now, and you need to get your tickets now. because this is going to be a really big deal. All right. Okay. So it's June the 5th. I wake up in the morning, Monday.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be the intensive. So there's still several hundred people around. And I open up my phone and I got all these messages and I get a shower and I walk downstairs and everybody's running around the hotel with their hair on fire. I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to be on fire. The point is that I'm saying, what the hell is going on? What's happening? What's happening? They're saying there's going to be an interview. There's going to be an interview in just a couple of hours. An article broke on the Debrief, right? Which is a very important publication, by the way, which I love. That David Grush, a military intelligence officer assigned to the UAP task force in the early days when it was the UAP task force, before it really got serious, and I believe while it was still anchored at the Naval Department over in the Navy, I can't remember it now, but the point is that he is coming forward as a whistleblower, which is the first one really that has come forward in that kind of formality way that I'm aware of. Everybody else has been witnesses, but not the same thing. He's coming forward whistleblower. He has been harassed. He has tried to deal with it. It is still going on. He had extraordinary information he gave to the appropriate entities like the Senate Intel Committee. He wasn't breaking the rules. He continued to be harassed, and he has had enough, and he is going public. And we knew what he was going to be interviewed about by Ross Coulthart on News Nation, which is the new, very well-funded, aspiring entity, which I believe intends to be Fox News without so much Fox, right? And it's growing quickly, and I watch it, and it's a very important entity, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, I assure you. And he is going to announce that he has multiple confirmations that the United States has crashed non-human vehicles and the bodies that piloted them. And of course, my answer was, say what?
What?
That one
That's what happened to Steve.
confirms Roswell instantly. Bingo. And once you confirm Roswell, it confirms that the government has known about this issue for 76 years. And not just one vehicle, multiple vehicles. He got that from people working in USAPs. He knew them. He did not provide that information in the interview because while he is a whistleblower, he is confined his statements to those things which fundamentally represent why he was being harassed. He is not a wild card. He is not a renegade. He's not trying to bring down the government. And so this was a black swan event that nobody saw coming, and it both disrupted the disclosure process underway, but it accelerated it in a number of ways. And so, hey, that's what happened, right? Anybody's ever gone on a vacation with a lot of plans? Oh, we're going to visit here, 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 and here. We're going to spend
That's me.
a cruise, and then the storm hits and the cruise is like, the boats go and everybody's getting sick, and then they have to miss 3 ports, and then the whole ship comes down with COVID. Yeah, it's like that.
You got to go with the flow, or you're going to be disappointed.
If you want to be an activist and change history, you need to be adaptive. So that happens. Now, follow what happens next. Right? Again, this is my job, right? June the 5th, he comes forward, does that interview, puts it all out there. Immediately it's being covered by the media. Big time. Dozens and dozens and dozens of articles. From June the 5th to July the 14th, which is essentially 39 days. In just 39 days, another event takes place we did not see coming. What? All of the previous legislation was sponsored by members of the Senate Intel Committee. Rubio, Warner, Gillibrand. Or Rubio, Gillibrand, Warner. Great, no question, big deal. And then out of nowhere, someone who is not technically on the Intel Committee, but as the Senate leader, kind of can sit in anytime he wants. I mean, he sort of has like, free pass. He deliberately and personally, he could assign this to Reid, one of the other senators that's now the sponsor of the bill. He could have assigned it to Reid, but he deliberately goes public and says, I am putting this, how would you say, providing this amendment to the Intel Committee to be added to the NDAA. And what was the core message in this amendment? The language is basically saying, in case you had any doubts about the non-human technology that you've been working on in your laboratory or squirreled away at the Roswell site or got from an uncle or whatever the hell, any of it, and certainly any ET or non-human bodies you happen to have, intelligent bodies you happen to have stored in a container in your basement or a freezer in your basement, that belongs to the United States government eminent domain, which is like, okay.
And I want to understand that. That scares me. That makes me bejiggity.
It should,
and I don't know why.
Make you feel wonderful. Here's why.
Should it? Okay, this is why he helps me.
Sure. I said I was here to help, didn't I?
I know. I love it.
Okay. Look, the idea that non-human technology is floating around in some startups out there or somebody's basement or anything else, that is not a good thing. Okay.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I'm thinking the flip side, but keep going. I'm all for, if you got it, you got to turn it in.
But as long as the government is saying what ETs, then the whole issue of ET tech kind of here and there and whatever, and maybe certain companies thinking we're going to patent this baby and eventually we're going to come out, we're going to make trillions of dollars and we own all the rights, can't be addressed. But now it can be. And he says that is government property. And if we want it back, we're going to get it back. But he goes even further. He says, now under this law, you will have to give us a full accounting to what you have. And he made no distinctions. Now, the number one company that has always been attached to, doesn't mean it's the case, but in the human, in the public sector, that's been attached to, quote, ET technology of being re-engineered is good old Lockheed Martin and the Skunk Works. And so that message is intended for them as well. Okay. So we're saying it's our property. We may want it. And we want a full accounting of it sent to the government. And we're going to establish a group to assess it. Meaning, okay, we're not saying, okay, take the ET tech you got, head on down to the New York Times, give it to them. No, you give it to us. It will be reviewed. And then we will decide to what degree that moves forward into the public sector. This is absolutely appropriate. It's like saying to somebody, if you've got any nuclear weapons technology you just happen to get your hands on, it belongs to us. You have got to give it to us. You have to give a report. And then we'll decide if that nuclear weapons tech should be provided to the general public. This is totally appropriate. And he puts that out there 39 days after Grush confirms we have it. Think about that. That is no coincidence.
Oh, right? No, it's, yeah. No, but let me ask you one particular case that I want to make sure I understand. So in this scenario, so I'm here in Oklahoma, right, in the middle of nowhere. A saucer crashes into our back pasture.
Yeah.
What now? Do they own my property? Do they like sweep in? That's the kind of stuff that's like, I want to make sure that people, we talk about stuff like that and clear it up. That's why I'm asking you, Steve.
If you are lucky enough to have a saucer crash into your property there, which will dramatically increase the viewership of your podcast, let me tell you. I mean,
it's a hypothetical, but I'm thinking Roswell. But think about Roswell. Back then, it's like they just moved in. They, took people away. I mean, it's just, that's where I was coming from. So what are the protections in this to prevent that? They moved
in and took the wreckage, you can be sure. And they had to deal with the fact that, it was 1947, okay? And so they really wanted that thing contained. They had their national security reasons. They threatened some people. They did this, they did that. That was 47. This is not 1947. What would happen today is they would move in very quickly and they would recover that crash vehicle from your property. Only this time they would be a lot more courteous about it, right? Because it would be like, hell, they might not even wall it off. It'd be like, hey, people would be showing, what are you doing? We got a crash vehicle from somewhere else and we're picking it up. Oh, okay. And so they would take it away. They would clean up afterwards. They would be very polite. They would pay for any damage, probably, that they caused. Whether they pay for the damage that the ET craft caused, I don't know. You may have to sue the ETs later. But no. So no. Okay,
I would be like a pit bull all over them. Don't worry, I'm Puerto Rican. I'd be like, oh, hell no. But I was just wondering what your opinion was on that particular part, because we're about to cover the NDAA and all kinds of sections, and that was one that made me super nervous.
Hey, look,
so where do you want to get?
Yeah, grab a piece of it, and squirreled it away in your basement, and then they got the rest and took it away. And at some point, they find out that you've got that piece in your basement. They're going to request that you return it. They're not going to show up with a SWAT team. They're just going to request that you return it. Okay. And under the law, they're going to first request that you report it. Send, hey, I've got this.
I've got it now. I've got it now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So okay. So this goes down on the 19th of 14th of July, and then it triggers another thing, which again was not part of the script, as it was unfolding as best they could to achieve the goal that they wanted, which is responsible, transparent disclosure process leading to a confirmation by the president, is the House, which had been kind of shut out of all this for the last couple of years. All the big Senate thing. They did have a briefing that was held at one of the subcommittees of the Armed Forces, run by Andre Carson, and I think Mr. Representative Gallego put a little language out there, but overall, it's all been Senate. And this happened, and that's a Republican led branch of government, and the House is led by the Republicans. I mean, Democrat, and the House is by the Republicans. And so they decided, look, we want in. Hey, this issue is we're just as important as the Senate. We want in. They moved fast. They took advantage of Grush and pushed to get a hearing in the House. Not surprisingly, it was the subcommittee or the committee, and I think he's on the subcommittee, that is includes Tim Burchett, who had been already vocally going on about this issue publicly for months. Right? He was out there. I mean, he was absolutely matter of fact. There's ETs here. And so it's not surprising that is a committee that came together and said, we're going to have a hearing. They might not have been able to get a hearing because just because you want to have a hearing doesn't mean people will come. And if people don't want to come for whatever reason, you have to subpoena them. And that would have been a very ill-advised thing to do. Because by and large, everything is being set up for the Senate Intel Committee. But Grush made it clear, I want this out. We went to the New York Times. Bussey, Kane, and Blumenthal went to the New York Times, and I believe they went to Post. They went to major entities. Will you do this? And they said, we don't have enough time to vet it. You want it done too quickly. He wants out. He wants to get it out. We respect that, but this is huge liability issues for us. We don't have time to do it that fast. And so they got the debrief to do it fine. All right. And so Grush, who wants his story out because he is trying to get relief from any and all abuse from government, which I think was pretty much brought under control by the intelligence community IG office. But hey, if you want to harass and threaten somebody, believe me, you can do it anonymously now. It's easy. And so he was still. It happened. You can't help it. So he wanted to go public. So boom. When he was approached by, I believe, that House committee, he said, I'll be happy to do it. Once he was on, I think they got Graves and Fravor very easily. And so they hold the first hearing on this subject under oath now. Not those other briefings don't count. Since 1968, right? 50, how many years is that? That's like 55 years. For the first time in 55 years, member of our military or any government entity went under oath on this issue in public, on camera, a hearing that has now been seen by countless millions of people. I had the great pleasure and honor of being in that room, which I was prepared to do no matter what it took, even if it meant going there days ahead and hiding under the desk, whatever. I was in there along with my friend Danny G.
We have a picture of Steve.
After 26 years in this, the idea that I wasn't going to be at the first year. But anyway, the point is that this was a very significant event, and it upped the ante, all right? And so all of those things happened just between June the 5th and July 26th. That's how fast this is going. Okay, now, what happens next is that the Schumer Amendment gets included in whatever language the Senate was going to bring forward. Schumer, not surprisingly, because he is not a formal member of the Intel Committee, essentially the bill is now, the whole bill, which includes the amendment, is now under the sponsorship of Senator Reid. So when you go to find this bill, and it's easy to find, you just put in NDA. Well, that's something that
that's our copy. Yeah, this is his copy, but
into that. You just put up Senate Bill 2226. Boom, it comes right up, and you can read the thing online. But that is the Senate version of the bill that has to be reconciled with the House. Now, let me talk a little bit about that. One of the things that people weren't getting is that each one of these tranches of legislation, going all the way back to the omnibus COVID bill, which included the NDA language from Senator Rubio, all that language first gets put up on the Senate page, and it sits there for months. And so even if some piece of it gets removed, it's still being read by everybody in the government, all across the government, members of the Congress and their staff and the military and everything. They're reading this and say, well, that's what the Senate's thinking about doing. And so the way this works is that you can put something in the bill that sends a message that you want people to hear, even if you're pretty sure it's not going to end up in the final bill. All right. And a perfect example of this was the third tranche that was sponsored by Warner. In that bill was a paragraph regarding the fact that people that are properly providing information within the context of the programs that are being set up, if anybody harasses them, bothers them, gives them a problem, demotes them, takes away their clearance, anything like that, that violates this bill and they will pay a consequence. This is not whistleblower protection. It's an example of witness protection, okay? Which is good. That's a number of things they were doing. They wanted to amp up the witness coming forward. I say that the information delivery process within government itself and within the military, because you can't have proper hearings if you don't have witnesses, right? Okay, fine. That language stayed in. But there was a paragraph following that in the proposed bill that sat up on the website for months. And what was that language? If, in fact, you are harassed, damaged, hurt, in some way compromised or whatever by people within your entity, your organization, or anyone in government, you have the right to sue them. Sue them for damages.
There we go.
And punitive damages, and the right to sue the government itself. And when I read that, I nearly fell out of the chair. I said, what? Are you kidding me? Our government goes to tremendous lengths to make it very difficult to sue it. Let me tell you.
Yeah, this is very you're right.
And so I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Well, guess what? Yeah. That language did not make it to the final bill. But guess what? When it sat there for 3 months, what was the message it was sending to the entire United States government and military. You know, guys,
Yeah.
we're really serious about this. This isn't 1969. This is some fancy juke move where we're going to fake the public out and end up with a nice truth embargo we can extend into the 2030s.
Mm-hmm.
No, we are serious about this. And there have been a number of things like that. Okay, so with that in mind, let us now get into the coming NDAA Act.
Yeah.
And
one question before we go there, can I put a chat question? I got Paranormal Pixie Laura, big fan of yours. Question: what then will stop the government from using the new law to keep the embargo going and keep the public in the dark?
Because the nature of the new law won't let it. Okay. What's happening is that people are reading a couple of sentences in the thing. They're going on Twitter and they're tweeting out, right? Which is where people get a lot of information. I get it, right? I'm happy to carry the water here. And then they get, wait a minute. It says that. Okay. Let us sort it out. Okay. So let's see.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do.
Okay. So what do you want to
do is I'm going to bring my version of it up on my machine. Because I need it big in front of me. And I'll assume that you have it up as well, right?
Yeah, okay. It's right here. Is this it? Do you see it on my screen?
Now, does the one you have up have the red highlighting?
Yes, that's
okay, good.
It should be on screen right now. Like if you look up on StreamYard, I have the screen and then you have your version. So I can search through it. So if you want to go to a particular section, I can find a text and quickly go there. Yeah. But you tell me how
I have to bring it up on my screen so I can scroll. And then as I scroll, you scroll.
Sure.
We scroll together.
Sure. We scroll together. It's a new song. Scrolling together. I'm gonna make I'm gonna find something. I'm gonna make a music video.
I see an Al Yankovic parody out of that. All right.
Oh my God.
I'm sure.
God, my cat's at the window. Right, my cat has found me.
It should be here. Come on. Where is it? Come to Daddy. It should be. No, that's the recruiting. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let us start at the beginning. Now, first of all, as I told you, it's 25 single line space pages, right? In other words, it's not some small little thing they stuck in the bill to keep us happy, right? No, it's 25 pages of serious legalese. So we begin. Senate Bill 2226 for the 2024 NDA. Let's start right off at the top with the title. This division, and that refers to the totality of this section, they call it a division, may be cited as, meaning the name, it's the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act of 2023, or the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Now, most people are going to read that and go, oh, okay, that's cool. For the last 20 years, and I'll be happy to take a certain amount of credit for this, we have been pumping out the term disclosure endlessly in interviews, in articles, and so forth. Now, let me be clear. The first person to really put disclosure in play in connection to this issue was Stephen Greer. In the late 80s, early 1990s, he creates the Disclosure Project, which, of course, was the entity that was behind the May 9th press conference that I attended at the National Press Club, where 15 or so witnesses were there in person, and scores of others were then presented to the press by videotape. Remember that? So that they could review their testimony. And this was a major political event. And remember the tide of history? Before it could really catch on, before it could start to develop residual effects, 9/11 happened just 4 months later. And so that was put on the back burner. Hella was put behind the oven. And that's just another aspect of the tide of history. I've referred to several. There have been many. The activist path is not an easy path. And so he was using that term disclosure, but he was using it pretty much in the context of disclosure as the revealing process. meaning we want to reveal stuff. We're going to bring more information out. We're going to get that out and so forth, which is fine. And the witness testimony was that, right? It's the disclosure of information. But in the early aughts, I made a maneuver that is also important. What I did in the early aughts is that because I understood from studying the great activist movements of the 20th century, and there were some big ones. 20th century had some of the biggest activist movements in all history, mostly because there was more high level media and a lot more people and a lot more citizen power. That every activist movement has to have a prize. It has to have a well-defined prize. You see, the disclosure process for most of the previous 70 years was about constantly trying to learn more, prove more, show more, do more sightings, and bring out information and just pile it up higher and higher until the government just had to yield before the magnificence of all this information. But that wasn't going to work. I mean, it was valuable without question. It was important. It was going to help in the end. Absolutely. We needed it. But in terms of ending the government policy of what ETs, no. That was a political process that required an activist movement. But to have an activist movement, you have to have a prize. You just can't get people, hey, get involved with this and we're going to get more information and bring out more. No, that's an endless thing. It has to have a prize. What was the prize of the civil rights movement? That essentially, and I think its final incarnation, ran from 1875, after collapse of Reconstruction, to 1964, almost 90 years. There was a prize. What was the reason people were risking their lives, giving money, investing all of their time in this movement? Is to get that prize. And what was that prize? The Civil Rights Act that ended segregation. That was the prize. And once they got that prize, a lot changed. Did it mean that everybody's life was now going to be just great? No. Did it mean that all of the issues attendant to racism in America was going to be fixed? No. But it was a major accomplishment. It was the prize, and they got that prize. What was the prize of the extremely huge, important independence movement in India, which essentially represented the pushback against colonialism? What was the prize? What? Just to, become friends with the British? Get, I don't know, maybe, a better tax break or something? The prize was absolutely clear. The British would leave India, and the government of India would be turned over to Indians, period. And until they got that, they didn't have the prize. They got that prize. And I could go on. This is absolutely essential. This issue didn't have that. And one of the reasons it didn't have this prize is because the activist movement regarding the disclosure process and the truth embargo was unlike any other activist movement that I am aware of. Certainly any of the major ones, because throughout the activist movement to get the British to give up power and leave India, nobody denied that the British were ruling India, right? In the movement to get the end of segregation by a civil rights, the government and the authority and the institutions were not denying there was segregation. But in this movement, the purpose was to get formal disclosure of the ET presence. And the government was saying, what ET presence? Why are you working so hard to disclose something that doesn't exist? This is like a whole different ballgame. And that is why it has been difficult in ways that no other activist movement has been. And why the reason there was no prize. Right? If there's no ETs, there's nothing to disclose. Therefore, what's the point?
Yeah, there's no goal. There's no carrot to hold if they're saying carrot doesn't exist.
So my job, and I set out to do what I could do, and others and my colleagues did the same, is we're going to create a new term. Disclosure, capital D. Proper name. Okay? All right? That's important. Okay. It's a different word. It is disclosure with a capital D is a noun, can be a noun. Okay. It is a noun, but
Mm-hmm.
with a capital D, it is a proper noun. That's what separates it. Otherwise, how do you distinguish? And the proper noun is because it refers to an event like Christmas, you know? I think even
Mm-hmm.
Halloween, the H is capitalized.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. It is an event. It is the disclosure event. And what is the description of disclosure event? It is the confirmation by heads of state of nations, which will almost certainly start with one. If 20 of them want to get together and do it at the same time, fine, that's never going to happen. When a head of state of a nation that is considered one of the major powers goes in front of the citizens of that nation and confirms the ET presence, that is capital D disclosure, and that is the prize of the disclosure movement. And as that became better known, it was easier for people to say, hey, here's money, here's support. I want to create a podcast. I want to set up a website. I want to contact my member of Congress, right? It's one thing to contact your member of Congress and say, look, I need you to tell us more about those secret programs you got, right? Can you tell me, where the labs are? No, that's going nowhere. You contact the Congress and say, I want confirmation of at least, remember, disclosure as it's defined in this movement now, is not the release of all the classified material, bodies, crafts, anything else. It is none of that. Disclosure with a capital D is nothing more than the President of the United States confirming in what could take 10 seconds, but won't, is that, yeah, we have non-human intelligence visitors here. And that's enough. That's it. He wants to throw in the tech, fine. He wants to throw in the bodies, fine. The moment the president or Xi Jinping or somebody major, head of state, confirms that we have non-human visitors, that is disclosure, done. Capital D, done. That is the single goal of this movement, the primary prize of this movement. Everything else we learn, come to understand, will be a complex, elaborate, small d disclosure process of revelation that is going to go on for years and is going to be very structured, but assuming the public and the media asserts their constitutional rights, will be relatively satisfactory. Okay? And so,
I have a quick question here because Dorothy Hawkins, love Dorothy. She's been on my show. I keep wondering if the United States president will be the last one to say, yes, it's 100% real. So I guess to add to that, it's like, do you think, again, because it's kind of going in chunks, that is going to be the culmination of this whole thing is when the president does it, but at that point, has everybody kind of slow disclosed? What are your thoughts?
The odds very much favor our president, and it's still very possible to happen this year. Should have already happened, but there's been some craziness up on the Hill. And then all the other heads of state will follow very, very quickly. Very quickly. They're not going to hold out. So it'll be, some nations are very small, and it doesn't matter whether the head of state comes out and says it. But the very fact that 40, 50, 60 other heads of state have already confirmed it will be more than enough. And the other heads of state of the small countries come out, yeah, I'm on board with that. And so within probably a week, the confirmation, the formal confirmation by government of the ET presence will be worldwide, global, and all 8 billion people will know it. All right? So it'll be our president. Now, the point I was trying to make with that elaborate run-up was this.
Sorry.
The name of this bill is no accident. The disclosure term is not in that bill by accident. There's a lot of ways they could have named this bill, but they named it the Disclosure Act, which is their way of saying, yeah, we know what you want, and that's what you're going to get. So right away, I'm in love with it. Now, let's just start with some of the early language, right? Section 9002, Findings and Declaration. Here's what they start off with. And this early language is always important because everybody reads that and then they go to sleep. Number one, all federal government records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena should be preserved and centralized for historical and federal government purposes. Hey,
I love that statement.
one of the
Love
things
it.
I've been saying in earlier interviews over and over again, I'm deathly afraid that the nature of the truth embargo and the fear that some have of the problems they're going to face when it's ended, they're going to be destroying evidence. And given that this is probably the most profound event in human history, any evidence destroyed would be tragic. And I've said that for 20 years. They just confirm that. Don't destroy anything, okay? Please, right? For thousands of years, humans and historians and God knows even ETs are going to be studying and examining this era, this moment in time. Hell, the Civil War, which lasted 5 years, I think 50,000 books have been written about it. We care about history. Section 2, all federal government records concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena should carry a presumption of immediate disclosure, and all records should be eventually disclosed to the federal government's knowledge and disclosed to enable the public to become fully informed about the history of the federal government's knowledge and involvement surrounding unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, people that don't know the history of this issue just read that and go, eh. I do. Okay. So what they've just said is, look, the presumption of everything related to this issue is that it will be eventually disclosed, including if you've got 25 dead ET bodies in preservation 40 levels below Area 51, the presumption is eventually they are going to be revealed to the public. The presumption of everything. That doesn't mean you're going to tell it tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're going to do a whistleblower thing. We're just letting you know. That is the presumption. You start with that, and then you move back from that based upon the legal language of the legislation that we're creating. And then they add this. You do that to enable the public to become fully informed about the history of the federal government's knowledge and involvement. And what they're saying is that we are acknowledging that you have the right to know the history of our involvement and knowledge going back, I don't know, to Egypt, certainly to the 1940s. And what does that include? It includes the threats that the military gave to members and people of Roswell to keep their mouth shut. It includes the knowledge, obviously, of the Roswell crash and what have you. It includes the knowledge and the activities of AFOSI, the Air Force the Air Force Office of I forget, AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Scientific Investigation, I believe. Everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole 9 yards. That history needs to be preserved, and we need to enable such that eventually that will be known. Number 3, legislation is necessary to create an enforceable, independent, and accountable process for the public disclosure of such records. Now, let's think about that. I've said countless times that disclosure must be orderly. It must be legislatively backed. This idea of dragging stuff out in the White House lawn and passing out copies of stuff, it was all ridiculous. But the early days of this issue, there was none of this. And so I guess, you just thought, well, how can we get it? And a perfect example of this is that when Lawrence Rockefeller went to President Clinton and said, look, go get the files. We want the files. Got to get the files released. And so he I don't want to say it that way. He puts John Podesta in charge of, interfacing and maybe going to get those files. The DOD wasn't going to give him those files because none of this legislation existed. There was no departments. There was nothing. And so you just give the files to the White House and then they're going to decide what to do with them? No. That had no chance of happening. But the fact that the attempt was made was grist for the activist movement. And we have milked the hell out of that, I can tell you, because it was something that happened that helped to enlighten people about the fact that, hey, if there's no files, why the hell is Lawrence Rockefeller wanting Bill Clinton to go get them? Now, so it has to be that way. It needs to be enforceable. That's good for us, right? In other words, they're saying
absolutely.
it needs to be enforceable. We're not just going to beg them to give us this information. We're going to make sure they have to give us this information. It needs to be independent. It means that the process of determining it needs to be independent of partisan politics, and it needs to be independent of the entities that have the information. And accountable. It means an enforceable, independent, and accountable process for the public disclosure, which means that it needs to be, we need to account for the process. We need to account when we say, no, this has to remain classified. We need to account. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I love about this is that regardless of how this changes, this is written. Like you said, this is out there to be seen. So if anything of this verbiage changes to lock things up, this is pretty freaking specific, man. This is not like a document to cover our, we want to be truthful. The truth will come out. This is very specific language. Like, this is it. Anyway, keep going. I'm just tripping out. I'm nerding out, Steve.
Even if this language were not to show up, they've already sent the message of where they're going, haven't they? To everybody out there that's kind of clinging to the truth embargo for whatever reason. Let's go on to 4. By the way, there's 24.
Hold on, I'm coming.
So we're not going to cover all 24. Legislation is necessary because credible evidence and testimony indicates that federal government unidentified anomalous phenomena records exist that have not been declassified or subject to mandatory declassification review as set forth in Executive Order 13526. They've acknowledged that, we got classified stuff related to unidentified anomalous phenomena. We've got it, right? And so we need this legislation to address that fact. Well, the only reason that there's, classified unidentified anomalous phenomena records is because there's unidentified anomalous phenomena, right? And everybody knows what that means. That is UAP, and that stands for UFO. Okay. And so it goes on and says relating to classified national security information due in part to the exemption under the Atomic Energy Act. In other words, what they're saying here is there's reasons why there is, in fact, evidence which has not been declassified. Now let's go on down to 5. Legislation.
First of all, people are loving this, by the way.
Yeah. And by the way, this whole section right now we're into is essentially the fundamental legal justification for the act itself, which is very revealing because once you get in the act, you get into lots of detailed stuff, which is very hard to follow. This is not hard to follow. So they've now given, the 3 is where they start. Legislation is necessary. 4, legislation is necessary. Now we're going to go on to 5. Legislation is necessary. Oh, I'm sorry. I already did that.
We did 5. We're going
6. Legislation is necessary to restore proper oversight over unidentified anomalous phenomena records by elected officials in both the executive and legislative branches of the federal government that has otherwise been lacking as of the enactment of this act. What are they referring to? Unidentified special access programs, USAPs.
Ooh.
They are acknowledging, right, that there has not been proper oversight. Well, how do you not have proper oversight? You create programs that are deep black, classified, require special access, and then you make them unacknowledged so that under the law, at least whatever rules are applying there, anybody involved in the program can't even acknowledge it exists. unless I assume they're talking to somebody with uber super high classification Q status or whatever else they have with oak leaf clusters. And if you happen to be in that person's presence and they ask you about the program, you might be able to at least acknowledge it and maybe even talk about it. But if the person isn't one of those, whether it's the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, a Joint Chief of the military, a top scientist, and they happen to just kind of mention it or wanted to know, is there something going on over at where and where? Your answer to them is, I have no idea what you're talking about. This points directly at that. That is a message to the USAP programs that the USAP thing is about to become passé. We can't have that. You can have deep classified programs. They can require special access. Fine. But they're going to be members of Congress and the executive that have that special access. And if they want to see, they will see. And the idea that they are not going to be able to see it because you are not even going to let them know it's there, that is over. Let's go to 7. Legislation is necessary to afford complete and timely access to all knowledge gained by the federal government concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena in furtherance of comprehensive, open scientific and technological research and development essential to avoiding or mitigating potential technology surprise in furtherance of urgent national security concerns and the public interest. Now, this is pretty straightforward. It's somewhat national security. In other words, we want to have timely access to this so that, say, some spy in one of our USAP programs, which happened with the atomic bomb and the H bomb, for those that haven't seen Oppenheimer, and please go see it. It's an absolute
I can't wait to see it. I haven't been able to, but I can't wait. Love it.
It's going to win multiple Oscars, guaranteed. So, and somebody then gives that information to somebody else. Suddenly, some other country turns up with ET-based technology, and we're going, what the hell? And so that's one reason. There are a number of reasons. Okay. In furtherance of comprehensive open scientific technological research and development essential to avoiding or mitigating potential technological surprise from anywhere. In furtherance of urgent national security, which obviously is a national security issue, concerns, and the public interest. Okay. Now,
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
They didn't have to add that, did they? They didn't have to add the public interest. They could have left it right there at security concerns. Why is the public interest in there? That is referring to the fact that if there's ET technology, known or unknown to the Congress or the White House, in USAPs, that has been studied and reversed, that may include extraordinary breakthrough in energy generation, that could make it possible to move electrons around at 1 cent on the dollar without any pollution, that technology is in the public interest. You get it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that opens that up. But this is where I go like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Is there 6 degrees of national, or security concerns? Is there a way to always tie these things to if this, and this, and then it could be how tight is that? Do you have a feel for that?
Well, the point is they've always been able to tie it to that. But
I know, but are they going to continue? That's what's like, this is change.
No, let me finish. They've always been able to tie it to those issues within the truth embargo, which is managed by various people in various places, and they get together in rooms and decide, should we do this or should we do that? They've always been able to do that. The whole point of this legislation is to say, no, you can't do that anymore. I mean, they could try, but they'll be violating the act, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the point. So, and let's talk about anti-gravitic drive. I think they have anti-gravitic craft. And I could list 100 reasons why anti-gravitic craft are in the public interest. And so that simple section, which if you read through quickly, Because they're not going to say, and for the purpose, and say in the urgent security concerns and the public interest in having super cheap energy and anti-gravity craft and new technology to deal with diseases or whatnot, they're not going to do that. All they said was public interest. That's all they needed to say. All right, now let's go to the next one. Section B, purposes. The purpose of this division are, so they're giving the necessary, the reasons necessary for the legislation, but what's the purpose of the legislation? One, to provide for the creation of the unidentified anomalous and phenomena records collection at the National Archives of Records Administration. Oh,
I'm excited about that.
now what is that? Why that? Why do we have to do that? Okay, well, the previous legislation did not get into where the stuff is going to go or where it's going to end up. Now they just said where it's going to end up is that over time, a massive tranche of records, documents, and so forth is going to end up at the National Archives of Records Administration, which is where you're going to go to find it. Only very soon, you're not going to have to go visit ever again, like Stanton Frieden used to do, sitting there hour after hour going through file boxes where he stumbled across, he stumbled across some interesting stuff. No, it's all going to be online. So boom, that's one reason. Here's another purpose: to require the expeditious public transmission to the archivist and public disclosure of such records. I like that. Okay. Now, that's the purposes of this division. So that's actually, there's a lot more in this bill, believe me, than that. Well, let me put it this way. Everything else in the bill is designed to serve that purpose, but in the process of serving it, oh my God, all kinds of cool stuff is going to happen. And so now we go to the next. I'm very quickly going to go through this.
Yeah.
The definition.
Now we're going.
They define the archivist. We know who that is, right? They define the term close observer. Close observer means anyone who has come into close proximity to unidentified anomalous phenomena or non-human intelligence. Think about that. They're not just saying, if you were out in the car one day and you're cruising down the highway and you saw something off in the distance and it kind of came in close and hovered over the trees, you're a close observer. Yeah, you are. But this is quite unambiguous. Anybody that has been in a lab, near a saucer, on a base where they were up close and personal, involved in the research, had a sighting, right? Probably even had contact. Anybody that has come near in proximity to this phenomena is a close observer, and therefore this bill applies to them. Collection. The term collection means unidentified anomalous phenomena records collected, established under the Act. Controlled disclosure. Now, this is where a whole bunch of people on Twitter and Facebook lost it, and Reddit and whatever. They lost it. Okay, because one of the problems, and this is true of all activist movements, it was true of the Indian independence movement, it was true of the civil rights movement, is that as they got closer and closer to maybe getting things done, there were still plenty of people that didn't trust the government. They felt that the Civil Rights Act would be a sham. They would not follow it. It was just going to be a way to modify them. Same thing with the Indians. They were gonna do this and do that, but they didn't either coming back or never leaving or whatever. This is not unusual, because at the end of major activist efforts where people have suffered for decades under bad rules of authority, people are angry, pissed, their trust is gone, their confidence is gone, and they don't want to believe anything. I get it. Unfortunately, there are those who understand that, well, activism is not servicing your emotions, it's servicing the prize. And so controlled disclosure campaign plan. Now, I wish they hadn't used campaign, okay?
I know there's so marketing. I'm like, I always think this is a marketing campaign, and that just kind of reminds me of it. But yeah,
They should have just said the control disclosure plan. They didn't need to put campaign in there. Anyway, the term control disclosure campaign plan means the control disclosure campaign plan required by Section 9009. Okay. And now that's just a definition. Okay. Controlling authority. Again, here's that word control, and everybody's losing their stuff, right?
Controlling authority. Word.
The term controlling authority means any federal, state, or local government, department, office, agency, committee, commission, commercial, company, academic institution, or private sector. This is why reading legislation is more difficult than reading James Joyce's Ulysses, okay? It's because in order to cover everything, they have to put in long strings of commas. So it means that all of that, commercial company, academic or private sector entity in physical possession of technologies of unknown origin or biological evidence of non-human intelligence. So what are they saying here? It means that if you are any of those entities, right, and they're all, and including the private sector, you are by definition the controlling authority that is going to be dealt with by this act. Okay. So in a sense, it's letting even the public sector know that you're not just a bunch of entities out there. We're going to show up someday with a SWAT team and start grabbing stuff. That there is a process here. You have control at this time, and that control may change based upon legislation that is in this bill and the previous 3 bills. So again, it's legislative language that can be concerning, and people go, the moment you say control, but it's part of the process. The process has to be a controlled process. Right? You know, they're not going to give everybody parachutes and say parachute into Area 51 and see what you can get. It's never going to happen. No. Okay. The term director, terms of directors means the director of the Office of Government Ethics. That is very important because what they just said here is that the government of the Office of Government Ethics is going to be involved in this process, right? Which helps to give confidence that the process is going to be ethical. 7, executive agency. The term executive agency means an executive agency, meaning any one of them, right? Government office. The term government office means any department, office, agency, committee, or commission of the federal government, and any independent office or agency without exception that has possession or control, including via contract or other agreement of unidentified anomalous phenomena. Records. Primarily they're referring to records now, but it's because this is mostly about the archivist, but that's okay. Now, what is that? Why is that necessary? What they're saying is when we refer to government office, if you don't have any of that stuff, we're not referring to you. So chill. All right. Relax. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Number 10, leadership of Congress. This is.
But what if you do? Hold on, before you go there. So if you don't have anything, should you be freaking out if you do?
If you do have something, then you come under the definition of government office, and therefore this bill applies to you. All right? Identification aid. And the term identification aid it means the written description prepared for each record as required by this section. Okay. In other words, this bill is asking people to describe what they have. That is turned up in several bills. In other words, and this shouldn't surprise anybody. They're not going to say, look, whatever you got, bring it over here. I mean, we would love it. Yeah, sure. Bring it all over here. Then we'll catalog it. No, they want you to catalog it first and then bring it or at least, and then we can decide what we want. Now, this certainly opens up the door for people to say, okay, but there's a couple of things here I'm not gonna write up a record for. We'll just kind of push that over in the side. Basically, they've just violated the bill, and their career is probably going to end badly. Number 10, leadership of Congress. The term leadership of Congress means the majority leader of the Senate, the majority leader, the minority leader of the Senate, the majority leader of the House, and minority leader of the House. This section is extremely important. Basically says, look, when we refer to leadership, we're defining it clearly. It's 4 people. All 4 are a member of the Gang of 8, by the way. Senate and House majority leaders of the Senate and House majority leaders. That's 4 people. Schumer, who just popped that amendment out that is now in the bill, was a majority leader. Okay. So that is narrowly defining the leadership. What they're doing is they're sending a message out to every other leader, the head of, chairman of this subcommittee, the secretary, the undersecretary of the whatever, legislative heads, whatever the hell, you're not a leader. And so this bill is directed at those people, and those are the people that are going to lead this matter. Then we go to 11, legacy program. This is interesting. The term legacy program means all federal, state, and local government, commercial, industry, academic, and private sector endeavors. Notice how they always include private sector. To collect, exploit, or reverse engineer technologies of unknown origin or examine biological evidence of living or deceased non-human intelligence that predates the date of the enactment of this act. Now, brother,
I know.
There's 2 parts here, folks. The legacy program refers to the fact that they are going to make a distinction between everything that's happened in the last 25 years and everything prior. This comes up later in the bill. Now, guess what? And there's going to be certain considerations with respect to that latter group. Everything prior to 25 years ago, which is 1998. I think anybody that studied this field knows some pretty interesting things happened prior to 1998. Okay. All right. And so they are saying, they're defining, right? But in the definition, and it's in some of the other acts. And again, people read this and they go, yeah, they don't understand. This is an act of Congress where they says in private sector endeavors to collect, exploit, or reverse engineer technologies of unknown origin or examine biological evidence of living or deceased non-human intelligence. You think they're referring to porpoises? Elephants?
Yeah, no.
Who do you think they're referring to that predates the enactment of this act? They've just, for the umpteenth time, acknowledged that there must be, otherwise, why do we have this language? They're not guessing this unknown technology and unknown human intelligence. How blatant do they have to be before people start to figure out this is it? And then National Archives, definition, the term National Archives. National Archives.
I have a quick question. So why 1998? We're just kind of tying the puzzle all together.
They chose 25 years. They chose 25 years for whatever reason. There may be a legal reason for that. It may have to do with some legislation regarding how long documents can be held. I don't know. But hey, if anybody Googles it while we're doing our thing here, let us know. Okay, now 13. We're getting down to the nitty gritty.
Ooh, NHI.
We're just in the definition.
NHI. I know, we haven't even gotten to the meat of it.
Yeah, what is the definition of non-human intelligence? Okay. Non-human intelligence means any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena or of which the federal government has become aware. Now, this is a fairly important distinction. It's not huge, but if you don't add, right, intelligent non-human life form, regardless of the nature, ultimate origin, if you don't add that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena, that section refers to porpoises. It refers to elephants. It refers to most of the chimpanzee species. It might even refer to octopuses, because increasingly our science has made it quite clear that there are animals that are sentient by any reasonable definition. All right. And so we got to exclude them. And how do we exclude them? Well, unless porpoises are building computers or whatever, or any porpoises were at Roswell, you don't have to worry about those. It seems silly, but believe me, it's quite, and the fact that they mention it, they mentioned again, sentient, intelligent, non-human life forms. Okay.
But responsible for phenomena. So it's like we're filtering it down and filtering and filtering. And I don't know. I mean, this obviously is what it is, and it's sitting out there.
Okay.
This is amazing. Keep going.
Next one, originating body. The term originating body means the executive agency, federal government, commission, committee of Congress, or other governmental entity that created a record or particular information within a record. Now, again, most of this bill is primarily about how all the records are going to come out and eventually end up in the archives. But of course, along the way there, they have to be declassified, reviewed, and what have you. They're going to get known public, right? In other words, we're not going to have to wait till they actually get to the archives. We'll find out about them before then. But it's mostly about that. But along the way, it is continuing referring to technology as well, and that's appropriate. Okay, so the originating body refers to agency, federal government, commission, committee of Congress, or other governmental entity that created a record. Right. So if you created a record, you're part of this bill, and it says any. So if you're working in a classified program at level 23 below, I don't know, what's that one place? I forget. Anyway, pick a base. That includes you. All right. 15, prosaic attribution. Again, they're really trying to be straightforward here. Prosaic attribution means having a human, either foreign or domestic origin, and operating according to current, proven, and generally understood scientific and engineering principles and established laws of nature, and not attributable to non-human intelligence. What are they doing there? They're saying, please, this is going to be a complex, very intense process. Please don't send us any stuff that clearly has not got to do anything with ETs, for God's sakes. Right? Don't clutter up the system. Right? If it's prosaic, we don't want to see it. 16, public interest. Ooh, very important.
This ties to that other one.
What's the definition of public interest? Because remember, public interest is mentioned up there in a very important section. Means the compelling interest in the prompt public disclosure of unidentified anomalous phenomena, records for historical and governmental purposes, and for the purpose of fully informing the people of the United States about the history of the federal government's knowledge and involvement surrounding unidentified anomalous phenomena, which we know there's tons of it after 25 years ago, which includes Roswell and nuclear weapons tampering, and on and on and on. They are saying that the public interest includes that, and you will get that in due course. 17, record. The term record includes a book, a paper. It's everything that would be a record. Everybody gets that. And that's pretty good. And they cover everything. In other words, nothing is missing here. Okay. If you wrote the damn thing on your, tattooed it on your arm, that's a record. They're going to have to, take a photo of your arm. Okay. Yeah. Number 18, review board. The term review board means the Identified Anomalous Phenomena Records Review Board established by Section 907, which is being put together right now. Okay. And I know some of what's going on there. In other words, that review board is happening. Okay. 19.
Anything you want to throw out there and share, feel free to. Just kidding. Anytime you say, I happen to know something about that, I'm going to ask. Go ahead. Okay. Technologies.
Right. Technologies of unknown origin. The term technologies of unknown origin means any materials or metamaterials. Very significant. They could have just said materials, but they included metamaterials. Why? because everybody knows that metamaterials is something that's emerged out of the revelations that came out from in 2016, and had been turning up earlier because we knew some research was being done. And metamaterials have a certain special quality, and they're already known to be associated with possible crash vehicles. So they say metamaterials: ejecta, crash debris, mechanisms, machinery, equipment, assemblies or subassemblies, engineering models or processes, damaged or intact aerospace vehicles. Okay, let's parse that. Damaged or intact aerospace vehicles. Okay, well, under the previous section we just read, it said that anything that's prosaic, we don't want to hear about it. And so when they're talking about aerospace vehicles, they exclude prosaic aerospace vehicles. And so I don't know if you've got a piece of a Challenger, the Challenger crash, or a satellite, comes down, right, with USA written on it, or anything aerospace that's prosaic, we're not interested. That means they must be interested in stuff that's from aerospace and not prosaic. Going forward, and damaged or intact ocean, surface, and undersea craft, because after this thing got underway a few years ago, the undersea stuff came forward right away. It'd always been kind of suppressed. They didn't want to get into it. And they finally had to acknowledge, the damn things are, moving around underwater, which is one of the reasons they had to move away from aerial and ended up with anomalous. That was simply acknowledging the fact that damn ETs can go underwater. Well, so can I. Okay, and damage or anomalous or incorporating science and technology that lacks prosaic attribution or known means of human manufacture. Okay, and you can substitute ET for any of that kind of language. Prosaic ET, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Temporarily non-attributed objects. In general, the terms temporally non-attributed objects means the class of objects that are temporarily resist prosaic attribution by the initial observer as a result of environmental or system limitations associated with the observation process, but nevertheless and ultimately have an accepted human origin or known physical cause. Although some unidentified anomalous phenomena may at first be interpreted as temporarily non-attributed, they are not temporarily non-attributed objects. Interpreted. And the two categories are mutually exclusive. This is getting into some subtle stuff. We can skip it. It basically is laying the groundwork for not wasting too much time dealing with stuff in the gray area. Okay?
Yeah, like the natural. Where do you want me to go next?
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's going to be some gray areas. They're trying to cover that so we don't get too out in left field. And now we go to section 21, third agency. The term third agency means a government agency that originated an unidentified anomalous phenomena record that is in the possession of another government agency. Okay? All right. That means that you had the record, but you don't have it now, but it's in the possession of another government agency, which means we may be interested in what you knew and had at that time. And now comes definition 22, the big one. Unidentified anomalous phenomena. Here it is. Not that it hasn't shown up a little bit in some of the other acts, but this act being the definitive major act is where we get down to the nitty-gritty. In general, the term unidentified anomalous phenomena means any object operating or judged capable of operating in outer space, the atmosphere, ocean surfaces, or undersea, lacking prosaic attribution due to performance characteristics and properties not previously known to be achievable based upon commonly accepted physics principles. Unidentified anomalous phenomena are differentiated from both attributed and temporarily non-attributed objects by one or more of the following observables, and they list the usual stuff. There is one component of this definition which may get added someday. And I'm just trying to be cute, but they can not only fly in space, they can not only fly in our air, and they can not only fly underwater, but there's evidence they can fly in the ground. They can fly through solid matter. But they didn't add that. Not that they don't know about it, because, well, let's don't get too far out here, right? Let's keep
I
it.
think this has gone really far, but yeah, I mean, yeah. Can you imagine if they added that?
Okay. Inclusion. The term unidentified anomalous phenomena includes what are previously described as, and this is the only place that UFO turns up in any of this phenomena in this legislation. It's simply as a definition reference. Yeah. Flying discs, flying saucers, unidentified aerial phenomena, unidentified flying objects. In other words, everything that the people in the UAP disclosure movement have been talking about since 1947. Every single word. So
it's just tying it back together is like a reference back to history.
Phenomena. Yeah, it's just reinforcing.
And USOs, yeah, which yeah.
And the effect of that is that because it turns up in the bill and is referred to as a form or definition, that strips another substantial amount of ridicule off the term and makes it easier for that term to live on. Now, it doesn't really matter whether it lives on or not, because ultimately it needs to be unidentified anomalous phenomena, because they're that anomalous and they really know how to get around. And so let's be correct. But if you want to refer to a flying UAP, so you're saying it was a flying unidentified anomalous phenomena, UFO will eventually go away, because ultimately it doesn't really have I think, the appropriate the definition to serve the post-disclosure world that's coming. Section 23. Oh, I love this one. Again, this is definitions now. Unidentified anomalous phenomena record. The term unidentified anomalous phenomena record means a record that is related to unidentified anomalous phenomena, technologies of unknown origin or non-human intelligence. Again, they keep pounding away. And all equivalent subjects by any other name, with the specific and sole exclusion of temporarily non-attributed objects, no problem, that was created or made available for use by, obtained by, or otherwise came into the possession of the Executive Office of the President.
He's kidding.
The Department of Defense and its progenitors, the Department of War. Because before there was Department of Defense, there was a Department of War. And guess what? That goes back before not 47. So we just went back even further. The Department of the Navy, the Department of the Army, the Department of the Navy, the Department of the Air Force, specifically the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI, which is where a great deal of the truth embargo was managed and directed. Now, when they said the Department of the Air Force, that should have covered it, but they specifically added AFOSI for a reason, okay? The Department of Energy and its progenitors. Everybody has suspected the Department of Energy is where a lot of stuff resides. It's a perfect location and a good hiding point. The Manhattan Project, the Atomic Energy Commission. Well, guess what? Information is starting to emerge that there were sightings and very unusual things happening during the Manhattan Project, out at Trinity, at White Sands. And so, but that information, not surprisingly, was very tightly held, because it was the Manhattan Project. They've included that because they know that that is coming. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Central Intelligence Agency and its progenitor, the Office of Strategic Services. Again, going back deep in time, because we really don't know when the government first found out. It may have been from a possible crash in the 30s. It could have been from a crash somewhere else that was delivered to us. Who knows? But they're opening the door to the fact that their engagement might predate 47. The National Reconnaissance Offices, the Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency that David Grush worked for, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, you know who they are, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Aviation Administration, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Library of Congress, the National Archives, the Presidential Library, the Executive Agency, any state or local government. How about that? Any state or local government Department Office Agent Committee or Commission that provided support or assistance to perform work in connection with a federal inquiry into the unidentified anomalous phenomena, and any private sector person or entity formerly or currently under contract or some other agreement, contract or some other agreement with the federal government, which covers in that one simple sentence the entire military intelligence government contract business. Period. The whole.
Is anybody left out? I mean,
nothing is left
out.
out. Well, the
nothing left out. This is like, it's all through.
PTAs don't have to come forward. I don't think
I
the
love that
agricultural
NASA's
department.
in there.
It's everything.
I love, yeah, it's everything.
So
again,
the message, that language, I'd be incredibly shocked if any one of those entities is removed from that section in the final bill. I'd be totally shocked. And I don't think that's going to happen. And so right there, right, as we approach 2 hours and 10 minutes on our little interview, right there, you have just gotten, hopefully I've provided a sense of how powerful this bill is. And we haven't gotten into the bill. This is just a term.
That is the intro. We're on page 5 of 26. I'm just going to throw that out there. Exactly. It's crazy, the level of detail in this. Keep going.
So I'm not going to, I can't go on now. I mean, 2 hours is enough. Everybody now can read the rest of this bill. I have put it, you have the link to it that I have put up on my website. I haven't, I've sent out a bunch of stuff on it and tweeted about it, but I'm going to put it up on the very top page of my website. This is a page on my website, is the bill. And so I'm going to be changing. And when I say I may be adding additional highlighting, reducing some highlighting. And so this will be a work in progress. And every time I make a change, not the bill itself, but in terms of, I might make a comment that I'll put on the side. I will post that. So you may want to revisit this page. It's a post.
Yeah, it's in the description of the video. It's all over my chat. It is on Twitter, so we're going to make sure that everybody has access to this, because now that you have the baseline, I mean, Steve just went through, broke it all down for us. Now we can, kind of work with that. This is my husband on chat, and he just dropped the link there as well. So, and I know that we're hitting a max, but go ahead, tell me. Yeah.
I got the perfect finish for us now. These are two things that put it all together. All right. One, as I've said countless times, everything that is happening, all of the legislation that's been passed, all of the briefings that have taken up on the Hill, private, the briefings that took place in front of some committees, the actual hearing in front of the House Oversight Subcommittee, creation of the UAP task force, the ultimate creation of ARROW after going through 3 name iterations, the assignment of a director, the study effort, God bless it, by NASA, the setting up rather of a group to study, and the study itself, which was not important, but they announced it, the setting up of the task force or the group that's the review board under the White House, which is really the first significant thing the White House has been brought into on this, but in a very appropriate way, very careful, nonpartisan, no problem for Biden. Everything that you have sort of heard about and everything else you haven't heard about since 2017, but particularly since 2020, is not about finding out what this phenomena is and telling us. It's not about research to learn what's going on here. Nothing is about that. The US government has known about it for 70 years. And every year that's gone by, they have spent untold millions of dollars researching, tracking, gaming, doing supercomputer analysis, studying craft, re-engineering for the last 76 years. highly classified, USAP programs, managed pretty well. The odd leak, the odd problem, but overall, with the cooperation of the media and the complete failure of American academia, they managed to keep this still essentially a truth embargo up until today. So it's nothing about that, period. So if you're wanting to know, well, why won't they tell us this and why won't they tell us that? And no, that's not what's going on. What is going on is that after 76 years, and going back again, that period between 17 and 2020, though I think the decision was made prior to early 17, 16. The government realized, those that mattered in the government realized the truth embargo was going to end. It could not last. It could not sustain the incredible pressure put on it by the web, the websites, the social media, the podcast, the global interaction capability where researchers in every country can go talk to each other or at least look at each other's websites by doing Google Translate. The general awareness and the engagement of the media, it could not possibly sustain it. It had to end. Okay, if you're going to end it, how do you do it? Obviously, even the good people. Well, there was two kinds of people involved at that point. The people who didn't want, three kinds of people that didn't want disclosure for the reasons they felt were valid, people that felt we actually had to get disclosure, and some real evil people. They were in the very small minority that didn't care one way or the other, just wanted to just do whatever made things worse for everybody. But basically, it's a battle between, not a battle. It's being worked out between the people that would prefer not to do it and the people that intend to do it, and the people that intend to do it are absolutely going to prevail. And so, but the people that didn't want it done, who have pushed back a little bit, had they raised legitimate concerns that it has to be done responsibly. You know, you just don't walk out in the East Room one day and said, yeah, we've had ETs here, we got saucers, we got all kinds of stuff. We didn't tell you, so what? Screw you, right? We may tell you, or we may not, you know, but they'll go away and leave us alone. No, that would be a very bad idea. And so, but they had another problem. They had two problems. One, how can we do it in an orderly, structured way that doesn't offend major players, major institutions of our government and our society, and be accused of being irresponsible and foolish? How can we not offend them? How can we do it responsibly? Totally down with that. And then the second part was, and this is the fun part, is that what we're about to do is going to be really embarrassing. You know, it's going to be not fun. Okay? Not fun at all. Because it's one thing for the government to acknowledge years and years and decades later that they once did some Tuskegee experiments on men of color that was awful and terrible and illegal, and maybe even offer up some compensation. I don't know what happened there. That's one thing. And it's stuff, but it's like, hey, we did it. We were wrong. Okay, fine. People move on. It is another thing to have to come forward and say, and of course they lied about the Tuskegee thing. I mean, they were asked about it. I said, what are you talking about? And say, look, we have been lying to you since at least 1947, every single day of every week and month and year, over and over again. We have maintained a parallel reality that is completely false. And we have lied over and over again. We have undermined research. We have undermined credibility. We have embarrassed you, ridiculed you, ghettoized you. We've done everything we could to make sure that this issue did not go real for 75 years. And now we're going to have to say, well, you know, it always was real. Now, a lot of the early people are dead. And one of the reasons I think the truth embargo was, one of the reasons preserving the truth embargo was that anytime anybody, raised the issue, isn't it time that people knew the truth? A lot of people raised their hand and said, look, that's fine, but wait until I die. Then tell them. I don't want to be alive for that. And so they're going to have to say, we've been lying all these years. And and every institution involved has got to account for this. The Air Force, the Navy, the DIA, the CIA, the government contractors, and on and on and on. Every single one is going to have to account for why they supported this decision. And they're going to get hit with brutally tough questions. And I'll repeat a few. Disclosure happens on Friday around 7 o'clock Eastern time, maybe 8 o'clock. The Beast Room is packed with press. The president comes out, indicates that this is it. I don't think there's going to need to have a slideshow. He'll basically say, over the coming weeks, you're going to see all the friggin' evidence you could ever want. But I'm confirming that to you today so you can prepare. Friday afternoon. Okay. Monday morning. They're going to do it for Friday because they want to take a week to just, have some drinks, chill out, do some jacuzzi, get ready for the post-disclosure world. It's going to slam into them like a freight train. So Monday morning, every briefing room in Washington, D.C. is going to be packed with press. The Department of Energy, the DOD, the Air Force, the Navy, and NASA for sure. And out will trot the spokesperson for all of these institutions, looking at a press who are salivating. I mean, they're already contemplating their Pulitzer Prizes, okay? And the questions begin. And one of the very first questions is going to be, Madam Press Secretary, when did the government really know about this technology and these non-human beings? And the answer is not going to be 2017. It's going to be 1947 or 46. Or
Will they ever say that? I mean,
no, they have to.
They won't.
Let me be clear. In the post-disclosure era, after the confirmation from the president has come, anybody that walks out in front of a camera and lies about this is screwed. Okay, because the level of human attention, multiracial, multi-religion, multi-ethnic, multi-everything, on these press conferences and these questions will be without precedent. You're going to have people watching these briefings and everything else that comes forward in the billions. And every one of them has a computer and an iPhone and access to the net. And so you walk out there and lie, and within 40 minutes, the internet will have already shown that you just lied bold-faced to the world, and then you can just pack your bags and leave and go spend time with your family. It just is not going to happen. They would have to be absolutely insane to do this after confirmation has taken place. And so the answer is 1947, 43, 44. Next question. Why didn't you kind of tell us sooner? And why did you go to such enormous efforts to prevent us from knowing? National security. Okay. Okay. Next question. How long have you had that? How long have you been reverse engineering ET tech? 47, 49. Really? That long? Why didn't you tell us that you had that? National security. The questions only get worse. Third question. Have you had any real breakthroughs doing this studying of this technology in terms of theoretical physics and or engineering, energy, propulsion? Answer, yes. How long have you had those breakthroughs? Decades. Why didn't you allow that technology to be available to the general public, all nations? Because you see, we're kind of stressed out here. Things are getting kind of problematic. Huge problems, massive issues, tech breakthrough. Wouldn't that be like knowing the cure to cancer in 1953, but keeping it embargoed because you didn't want it would increase the population, that would increase the population and might undermine Social Security, whatever. Answer, national security. Okay. Next question. there's been a great deal of discussion about non-human entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a whole lot of humans have talked about non-human entities, those ones you're referring to, showing up in their bedroom late at night and taking them for a walk, a chat, or whatever. Not once, but many times. Are non-human intelligences engaging, contacting, or abducting American citizens without their permission? Answer, yes.
You think they'll say it? Okay.
Next question, which is even harder. How long have you known that? Answer, 40, 50, 60 years. Next question. Why didn't you do something about it? Answer, there was nothing we could do. Have I made my point? How difficult the post-disclosure world is going to be for every government on this planet, particularly the United States government, every institution that's relevant within those. It is going to be brutal. And so the second reason that all of this is taking place is so that our government can do the right thing finally, but kind of retroactively in a way. They're going to do all of the things, doing all of the setup, passing all of the laws, getting all of the people informed, everything they should have done and could have done in 48, 53, possibly 63 after the Cuban Missile Crisis, definitely after 91 and the end of the Cold War, but didn't. They're hoping that by showing the right thing, that when those questions get asked and we realize that they've all known about it since 47 or earlier, people are going to be more generous. They're going to be more willing to let bygones be bygones. There'll be less lawsuits, less demand for compensations. It will be less disruptive. Okay. And understand that they've always known for some time that when they finally did disclose, the public they were going to be disclosing would be public that has stopped believing any damn thing they say. With confidence and trust in government at all-time lows, trust in everything. Name an institution, the agriculture department, whatever. Nobody trusts anybody. And there's a great deal of anger and frustration that has developed that we are seeing the results of. And that is exactly the environment they're going to be coming into and saying, yeah, we've been lying for 70 years. This is not easy. This was going to be brutal. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be, because if they had been able to do this sooner, like back around 2000, maybe, if maybe even there hadn't been an attack on our country in 9/11, that the press conference might have led to hearings and it could have led to a major breakthrough. It might have had disclosure in 2003, but it didn't work out that way, and so we're having it now. And so that is one thing I wanted to tell you, and then the other thing I want to leave you with is this. As near as I can tell, this huge bill is the last piece. It is the last thing that needed to be put in place in terms of the structure that now allows disclosure to go forward. And by that, I mean hearings in the Senate. The witnesses are ready to testify. Their testimony is mind-blowing. They've been interviewed. They're fully known. They've been vetted. All it takes is for Mark Warner to call for hearings, and we get disclosure. It's all in place now. We don't need anything else. All right? And so the situation now is this. What impact will the war that is now developing in Israel have? Will it delay this? Mm-hmm. That's one consideration. Two, if we don't get disclosure soon, the whole issue is going to be hanging over the coming election, which is going to be just a three-ring circus and cost $8 billion, I suspect, one of the most, an election for the ages. It's going to hang over the whole thing, and everybody's going to look like a fool. You know what I mean? It's like having a giant, it's like having a big meeting of a whole bunch of powerful people, and over in the corner is a giant elephant, huge. He's just sitting there. Right?
Yeah.
And nobody can refer to it. And so, and anybody that does bring it up, because we're talking to a meeting and it's a Q&A with the public, and the Q&A says, "Excuse me, a candidate so-and-so, do you see that 10,000 pound elephant sitting over there in a chair in the corner? And the answer is, I no, I don't. Is there an elephant there? I didn't know. It's going to be like that the whole damn election. It's going to be You see what
I
I'm saying?
want to follow up with, yeah, I totally see, but I want to get your opinion on this, because in seeing the timeline of the election, specifically to the primaries and upcoming, do you see, here's my concern. It's like, is it too close to that primary time for them to rock the boat on the 2024 election by introducing this? Or do you think that there's a way to still get there and, in time for the primaries and not, remember 2020 was a mess. So it's like, are they going to be more protective of 2024? What are your thoughts? I mean, do you really think that this is still doable before the primaries?
Now, getting the ET disclosure done soon is not going to rock the boat in this election. It's going to save the boat from sinking. My God.
I want to hear that. I'm just going to, I want to hear that. Yeah, that's what you're helping me, Steve. Told you, you're helping me.
Look, this election is going to be awful beyond measure. Assuming it goes forward as expected, it's going to be awful beyond measure. It's going to be a national disaster, a huge embarrassment, a 3-ring circus, a mud fight, right? A bullfight. It's just, people are going to flee the country. Other people are going to turn their internet off, destroy their computers, and hide in their bedrooms. It's going to be awful. And so what could possibly make it better? An established truth that affects every person in the world, every institution of government, every country, confirmed to the world, that is about as apolitical, nonpartisan as anything you could possibly come up with. It just isn't anything. I suppose cancer is not particularly political, but yet when you dig a little deeper, there's all kinds of partisan positions on cancer. So that doesn't count. This is
not everything there is, right? So yeah, okay.
But this is non-human intelligence for elsewhere. It's a paradigm shift unprecedented in human history. It's the biggest event of all time. Nobody for a second thinks the ETs have a political party card. The issue itself is transcendent in its essence. It transcends politics. It transcends religion. It transcends finances. It transcends everything. And so imagine if an issue of that importance was available for every candidate, and there will be approximately, in terms of balloted candidates, there's going to be about 2,000 candidates on the ballot for the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate and the governorships. So just that, it's 2,000 candidates. Imagine if every one of those candidates was in a position to speak to this transcendent thing that just happened and give their opinion about that to the public. This is what I think about that. This is what I would do. This is how we may want to view and what if we have open contact with ETs? In other words, all of them suddenly have this nonpartisan issue that they could go in as and if we get it done soon enough, there'll be plenty of time for them to go read some of Richard Dolan's books between now and the primaries, right? I got a lot of other colleagues with some pretty good books. Several hundred documentaries out there. They could watch those if they can't read. And I'm that way. I can't read anymore. My attention span is now 1.2 seconds. They could really get up to speed. You'd be surprised how much you could learn if you're committed in just 30 days on this issue. And suddenly they're out there in the husking. And people are asking them about this ET thing, and they're giving literate, intelligent, nonpartisan answers. Imagine how positive that would be on this election, how much it would strip the venom out of it. It would be a diversion, right? In other words, before we get to whether we should have destroyed the Capitol when we had the chance, we simply start talking about ETs and just kind of move around that question. whatever. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm simply saying that right now they don't have that. They got nothing. They've got nothing but an endless stream of hyper-partisan vindictive that they're going to spew out in endless streams on television and in endless ads that will come up for months and months and months. And they're going to spend somewhere in the range of between $4, $5, $6 billion doing it. And when they've spent that $6 billion and they've all finally won their election and get sworn in without disclosure, we won't have a clue what the hell these people think, know about, or care about the fact that we're not alone in the universe. And that will be the government for the next 2 years. So, no, I'm not worried about disclosure sinking the boat of the coming election. It is the one and only thing that can keep the damn thing afloat, so we all don't drown in misery as we have to live through what will start around the 1st of 2024 and go on relentlessly, and I mean more relentlessly than ever. I was alive when we had elections back in the 50s and 60s, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They were, you watched the news, you maybe saw a debate, you read things, okay? And then somebody got elected. Now, elections, particularly in a presidential year, are some sort of psychological gambit where you have to walk through coals and go through hell and be irritated and aggravated and go on serious drugs in order to get through the damn thing. And then finally get an election that somebody will say it was bogus.
Yeah.
We can't keep this up. If we don't change this, I'm telling you, it's all going to hell. I'm going to go to a nice, safe country. I already have one planned, but I'm still holding that we'll get it together. And so, no, we have to have disclosure certainly before the first primaries. We've already had some debates. They were hilarious. I don't think it would have mattered much. But as we get serious, particularly as we get to the primaries, we've got to have disclosure. And I hope to God, the Senate, which is really the controlling entity here, which is run by Mark Warner and Marco Rubio, they basically co-chair. It's the least nonpartisan committee in Congress. It has been briefed up the yin-yang. It has gotten personal meetings, private meetings. It's gotten classified reports. That committee, no matter what happens in Israel, no matter what happens in the Ukraine, short of nuclear war, hey, we take a break. I get it. But short of it, they will have the courage to say we must have these hearings now. We cannot let this thing slide into this election. We are way too far. We're way out there now. We have put this out there in huge language and bills and statements by members of Congress and the media, hundreds, well, actually, it's going to be about 2,000 articles just a year. It's all out there. And so you're going to have people going out to campaign to be the governor of this or the senator of that. And they're not going to be able to answer a question because it still hasn't been confirmed. And so they're afraid to say anything. Or if they say something, some other candidate says, hey, that idiot believes there's ETs here. Put a tinfoil hat on him and hand him a green ET doll. Don't elect him, elect me. I don't believe any of that. That's what's going to happen. And so I'm going to leave you all with that. I have to go. It's been
Thank you so much, Steve. My gosh, I feel so bad because it's been 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I wanted your message to come across the right way, and I wanted you to, just put it out there. Everybody's been so excited about this. If there's anything we can do, sharing the information, you guys retweet, share, show the NDA document, go to Paradigm Research Group, look at the information. It's a great resource for all of us to do research, and it's going to be up to us to send the message back out to people. So, we can help each other.
Don't go away.
No, I'm not going anywhere. Never.
It's promo time. It's promo time.
Oh, yes, please do.
Sometimes I forget promo time, but
I was going to let you. That's why I was bringing it up. I was feeding you.
All right, folks. Here we go.
Go, Fred.
Right.
First.
All right. First, as I told you, a major I think a significant organization with it's a grassroots organization, but it has the potential to become very important, is going to be announced early November. That's one. Two, November 10 to 12, massive conference in Las Vegas at the Luxor Hotel.
Oh, man, I want to go.
Stairway to the Stars, produced by Disclosure Fest, which is a 501c3 that does a whole range of meetings and organizations and groups and events and so forth, built around helping people. All right. So it's a righteous organization. This is a version. This is basically going to be Conscious Life Expo in a pyramid. Right.
Yeah.
But it's got more rooms. I think I have 2,000 rooms aside. So that's good. And there's lots of other hotels. So anyway, and I'm going to be there. It's going to have a reasonably significant UAP component, including a UAP disclosure panel, which I will moderate. Thank you very much.
Ooh, the guests look great. I was checking it out. I'm going to put that link out there too, because the guests look fantastic for that too.
Disclosure. It's an easy site, disclosurefest.org. All right. That happened 10-12. Now, on December 1 to 3, the World Ufology Conferences is holding another one of its World Ufology Symposiums or conference, Ufology World Conference. This is a Spain organization that has been growing rapidly over the last few years, putting on conferences out there in other countries besides ours. Because guess what? The interest out there in the subject is actually pretty big. All right. Well, this one is December 1 to 3. I will be speaking. It is in Mexico City. Mexico City. Why is that pretty interesting? Because of all the nations in the world, I believe that the population of Mexico has the highest awareness level of the subject than any other nation, including the United States. They are into it big time. And Mexico City, for those that haven't kept track, has 25 million people. So consequently, this could be a very intensely attended conference. December 1 to 3, Mexico City. There is a possibility that I will be speaking at a conference in San Marino on hang on, when are we talking about? This would be November 4-5. But it may not happen because the travel situation is very difficult and tricky. But it's possible. But nevertheless, there is a conference in San Marino. It is
stuff everywhere.
It is called the what is it called? It is. I think it's also a World Ufology Symposium, and of course it's sponsored by CUN, the UAP organization in Italy, run by Roberto Panatti. So I want to mention that. Okay. Also, Contact in the Desert. It's going to be back next June. I am speaking. I'm a panelist. I'm also helping to produce. There's going to be a lot of pretty cool speakers, and we anticipate 3,000 people. As I said earlier, if you're coming, book your room now. Please don't even think about waiting. So that's coming up. All right. And of course, there'll be other conferences coming up without question. And also, one of the developments that's happening simultaneous with this whole disclosure process that I described, the formal, is that more and more people are, the big shots, the people that were always kind of standoffish, it's like, that's a little out there for me. And I'm running a huge multi-million studio. Right now, there is disclosure ET related projects at practically every studio in Los Angeles. There is you're going to see a literally torrent of content coming because they're all anticipating this breakthrough. A simple example of just one example of that is, of course, Steven Spielberg comes out with Vice with the 4 Encounters docs in that series, which by and large is a pretty good series. They messed up on Ruah, but overall. And so Steven Spielberg, and he's not really done this before, he has put his imprimatur behind documentary evidence. Not Taken was a scripted series that was out context. Incredible. 2002. E.T. was, fiction, right? Close Encounters of the Third Kind was almost nonfiction and a major movie. But this, he is now getting real. So he's basically told a lot of people in this town, I'm in, where were you? I happen to know other major people like Steven Spielberg are already dipping in. That is coming. I have a show coming as well. It's modest. I can't announce it yet, but it will eventually hit. It's not world shaking, but I'm very fond of it. And it only took 2.5 years to do. But that's because of the pandemic.
That's huge.
The wars and everything else. Okay. Now, in addition, corporations, I think, are already anticipating this, but they will say nothing. Right? But don't be surprised if they move very quickly if we get disclosure. In other words, the oil industry is not going to go bankrupt, right? The oil industry has seen this coming for years. If we get a major tech breakthrough in energy out of that, they will shift gears so fast and they will make even more money. So stop worrying about it. But the industry is starting to but they're not saying anything. Who is saying anything are the intellectuals. And one of the most important intellectuals is Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan finally, after trying for years and years and years, was able to get his, I think, third think tank in a sense up. But this is the one, of course, this has been his dream think tank. It's called the New Paradigm Institute, right? And there's a reason it's called the New Paradigm Institute. It is absolutely all about the post-disclosure world. Anything that it might do between now and disclosure helps find that. And he's doing, I mean, personally, he's involved in this stuff. He's all over the place, okay? Because he's Danny Sheehan. He's a legend. Look him up. Read his biography, for Christ's sake. He is probably one of the greatest legal activists, civil rights activists in history. And so the New Paradigm Institute has been founded. Well, it's gotten that initial tranche of funding. It is set up an office in Washington. In the Methodist building down, the old Methodist building down by the Capitol, across the street from the Senate Intel staff office. Okay, it already has a full-time employee who happens to be a wonderful man who is his whole life is about the issues that post-disclosure world. Jim Garrison. Okay, he is going to set up an office in Los Angeles when he gets even more funding, which I know damn well he will. He has a significant series in the works about his entire life. That'll be coming out pretty soon. Okay. He's on the board of directors of this project that I told you will get announced in early November. And so the New Paradigm Institute is that's a big one, big money, huge boards, a huge advisory group, super top people, the top people. All right. And in addition, and it will be 501c3. Another promo. Very soon, within weeks, I'm going to submit Paradigm Research Group, finally, after 26 years, to Washington, D.C. for nonprofit status. It will become a nonprofit. I'm
so glad.
Later this year.
I'm so glad.
And then, and of course, I will apply for the IRS nonprofit. You have to have two. But once you are registered in a state, you can start receiving tax-deductible funds while you wait for that. So PRG very soon is going to be in a place to collect nonprofit donations. Why is that important? Because I'm going to convert PRG completely into a mini think tank, a boutique think tank. However, now while Danny's got this big gargantuan super duper think tank downtown, right by the Capitol, I'm going to have a little think tank, but mine is going to be in the National Press Building, uptown, 2 blocks from the Capitol. And because I'm in the National Press Building, upscale, I've got deluxe conference rooms available.
Dang,
right? We got the National Press Club upstairs. And so Danny and I are going to, Danny's going to be comfortable and saying, Steve, so we're going to kind of work together. But my think tank is going to have a limited group of individuals, advisors, limited staff, to focus on certain select issues, and of course help Danny's think tank in any way. So but trust me, this is not just happening with Danny Shane and me. I can bet you dimes to donuts, okay, that every single major think tank in this town, the Enterprise Institute, right, the Center for American Progress, the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, every single one of them, which is filled with very smart people who know how to read legislation, are already figuring out how to structure their extraterrestrial division. Okay, right? The extraterrestrial division, or the the post disclosure, the disclosure extraterrestrial of the Enterprise Institute. They're going to get their fingers into the new world and the post disclosure world big time. You can count on it. So all of that is just going to start coming out after disclosure by the president fast, because it's taken so long, and it's hardly anybody in the damn town that doesn't know what's coming, which is good in a way. I mean, I kind of like that because it's going to minimize the disruption. But it is going to make the post-disclosure world really interesting. You're going to have all these groups competing to how we're going to shape things in this new paradigm we're in. Who gets what or why, or should we change this? Politics, geopolitics, all of this theoretically is up for grabs in a sense to be dealt with, hopefully, in the service to massive reform. This is going to be the trigger that says, hey, now's the time to reform all that stuff you wouldn't fix. You can fix it now. You better. Because if you don't fix it this time, well, there won't be a next time. Unless there is ET intervention. And I've said many times, I believe open contact is 1.5 to 2 years after disclosure. So we will be for a while in the post-disclosure world, which would be fun. And then we're in the post-disclosure, post-open contact world, which is going to be hysterically fun. I mean, and that's why I'm staying alive, right? The only reason I'm staying alive, because if you take everything else that's going on, take that away, it's like, I'm out of here. I mean, this is just crazy.
Oh, come on. There's so much fun to be had.
What's coming is
I know what you mean.
it's going to be unbelievable. It's no person living ever is going to experience what we're about to experience. And they've experienced some cool stuff. The Reformation, the Renaissance, I don't know, a lot of wars, a lot of empires falling and coming, and whatever the hell, maybe even the flood, right? Yeah. None of it is going to compare what's coming once we get disclosure and what we're going to live in. And not only that, unlike most of the huge things that happened in the past, we are perfectly prepared. We've got the tech, we've got the access, we've got the networking ability to participate in this paradigm shift, a somewhat comparable paradigm shift that had participation was, and I'm not trying to single out anything here, but it just happens to be the Christian religion and the birth of Christ. Okay, the birth of Christ was a significant thing. You could call it a paradigm shift. And in the post era, which we call AD, if I'm not mistaken, people were able to get involved. And they did get involved to deal with that paradigm shift. But that was then, not now. And so while they were able to deal with it, it took 2,000 years, right? Well, actually, it took hundreds and hundreds of years before they were able to take that event and try to use it to shape the world view of maybe the Romans or the Middle Eastern or whatever the hell, right? Which is a little bit partisan. It wasn't easy, okay? And there were many casualties. But that was an example of a significant paradigm shift that people could get involved in and maybe affect change. I mean, no disrespect when I say that this paradigm shift and the ability of people to engage it, use it, and help change the world because of how fast it will happen, how many people will be involved, is magnitudes, exponentially more significant than that very important religious event and a number of other events like it. Again, this is not 2,000 years ago. This is the 21st century. And every one of us is walking around with a friggin' computer in our hand that could have sent a spaceship to the moon. And so all of this is happening in that context. And I would finish with this. The ETs have been participants in the disclosure process. They haven't just been sitting there going, yeah, what are they going to do? What are going to happen? No, they have been an active participant in this. They have an agenda. And that agenda is very much tied to everything we just talked about. The tech, the issues we're facing, the ability to network, the ability to change, all of that is not coincidentally tied to everything that's happened since that vehicle crashed in Roswell and what's going on right now. And that is one of the reasons why I predict open contact so quickly, in 1.5 years. So this is not just us, it's them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to ultimately, if we can live a few more years longer, we're going to find out why. Why did they turn our nuclear missiles off? Where are the hybrids? What was the reason for the abductions and contact? What is the agenda? What do you have to tell us? What do you have to share with us? All of this could be a couple years away if we can just get an announcement from the president confirming the ET presence.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for much here, folks, okay?
Just get on the podium and say it. I'm like Sam Kinison, say it. Just say it.
Hold the hearings, get the damn thing done. And once you've got that done, then you won't have to worry about that so much as you deal with the other crises that are raining down upon us. God knows what they are, right? But I'll tell you something else. In order to deal with crises, in order to address the horrible things that happen in this world as a government, as an institution, you need trust, right? You got a crisis in the country, call it the gun issue. And you want to try to deal with it, and nobody believes a damn thing you say, you're not going to get anywhere. Pick anything. It's the same thing. Ending the truth embargo is going to do more to reestablish some confidence and trust in government than anything of this century that I'm aware of. Nothing even comes close. And then you can take that trust you've earned by finally telling the world the truth about this, and then continuing to provide information, confirming it, and telling us what you know. You can take that trust capital you've earned and use it to deal with all the rest of the mishigosh that's going on. Maybe people actually believe you and say, look, here's what we need to do. Okay, fine. I'm down with that. If that's what you think you should do. Right now, forget it, right? You can't do anything that the internet won't immediately attack is some sort of dark conspiracy plot being run by the Illuminati designed to put us all in chaos or something. It doesn't matter. We can't stay in that zone much longer. And the way out of that zone, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman of the Senate Intel Committee, is disclosure, right?
Get it done.
All right.
Get it done.
I'm out of here.
Thank you, Steve.
I'm dropping the mic.
Thank you. I know you like just dropped the mic. Boom. That was, Steve, that was so amazing. And it's been 3 hours. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to take that much time, but that was so fun, right? Because this was fun, but it's like I took you all afternoon.
I love doing this. It's my job. And I love my job.
We loved having you. Everybody was like so excited. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. If you want to hang out backstage or you want to go back, we can talk on email. I'm just going to put you back there to say goodnight to the folks and do a little outro. But we can talk later because I want to help you.
Yeah, I'm going to drop in.
I'm going to email you later.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. Pleasure. Take care. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye. We're okay down in Oklahoma. It's okay. Thank you, Steve. Take care. Thank you so much. Oh my God, you guys, how awesome was that? I don't even know what just happened. So it is almost at the 3-hour mark. I just want to say thank you so much, everybody that hung out today. Thank you to the chat. Thank you, Renee Cruz, Hellfire, Stewart, Poner, Lord Rebel Jack, Fifi, Rebellious Unknown, my Linny, my Alien Girl. I mean, just everybody's been so fantastic. Helen, Shelly, thank you guys so much. Cindy, you all just love you. Had a great time. I'll be back soon. Don't know when, but I'll be posting it because we got some stuff to do. So I'm going to let you guys go for the rest of the afternoon with this lovely little outro. Again, thanks to the Hurleys for my outro. Thank you so much. Stay mindforked because it's fun. Love you. Bye.